Naruto, starting as a civilian ninja. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, Team Split. Minato, you see, this is the expression. Every time I see him with this expression, I want to beat him up. Uzumaki Kushina said to Minato angrily, with her hands on her hips. Hearing this, Muen was stunned, and in an instant he understood what was going on. It turned out that, after coming out from the third generation, Muen touched his rumbling stomach, and prepared to find a place to solve the 5 internal organs first, but he didn't expect to meet Minato and Kushina again. This time, Muen didn't dare to tease the two. After greeting them normally, they started chatting. When she heard that the two would go out of the village to perform a mission together the day after tomorrow, Muen unconsciously thought of Kushina's fate in the original book. If it weren't for Minato, she probably wouldn't even be able to leave the village. It was at this time that Muen looked at Kushina with a hint of pity. Unexpectedly, this extremely subtle change in expression was noticed by the sensitive Kushina, which made her feel extremely uncomfortable. This is why Kushina wanted to beat Muen. Kushina-san, I'm sorry. Muen bowed to Kushina solemnly to apologize. This apology made Kushina feel embarrassed, and she stammered, It's okay, Muen-san. When Muen stood up, Minato said, Muen, let's have a barbecue together tonight. What's going on? You suddenly want to treat us? Muen was full of confusion, and then he thought of what he said last time, and hurriedly said, I was just joking last time. There's no need to take it seriously, Minato. It's not because of this. I just feel that we haven't gotten together for a long time. I'm going to leave the village for a mission soon, and I don't know when we will meet next time, so I want to have a barbecue together. Minato explained hurriedly. Since you said so, I will reluctantly agree. But can I call a few more people? Seeing the hesitation on Minato's face, Muen quickly added, Don't worry, without a Kimichi Tangdang, I'm not like some people who desperately betray my brothers. There are only 3 of my teammates, and I just happen to have something to discuss with them. But your teammate's sister is also a big eater? At this time, Uzumaki Kushina said on the side. Haha. Muen laughed and explained, Hui-yun had just practiced the secret technique, and her body was too weak, so she could eat so much. Now she is fine. Then there is no problem. Call them all over. Without waiting for Minato Namikaze to speak, Uzumaki Kushina said generously on the side, Don't worry, Minato. I also have some savings, which will definitely be enough to eat. Time quickly came to the evening, and it was time for dinner. When Muen rushed to the barbecue restaurant, Minato and Kushina were already waiting here. Not long after the 3 of them exchanged greetings, the other 3 members of Muen's team also came together. With the blessing of barbecue, the atmosphere at the table is becoming more and more lively. What Muen didn't expect the most is that Uzumaki Kushina and Kuramakian seem to have a feeling of meeting each other too late. The relationship between the two quickly heats up. They are already older sisters and younger sisters, and they are just about to become sworn brothers on the spot. When the dishes are over and everyone has almost finished eating, Muen brought up what the third Hokage said in the morning, which made everyone fall into deep thought for a moment. Captain Muen, what do you think? Hinata Rakizuki looked at Muen and asked. Of course I also want the 4 of us to be a team forever, but I can't let you be a chunin all the time because of this. If that's the case, wouldn't it make me seem too selfish? Muen also expressed his thoughts. Then I understand. Captain Muen, you will always be my captain. Hinata Rakizuki made the decision first and said, I agree. You. Inozuka Shida on the side, glared at Hinata Rakizuki, but before he could say anything, he was blocked by Hinata Rakizuki's words. Shida, I know you are angry with me now. I also want to stay under the captain to do missions, but we must also grow up. I think you know better than me what being a jonin means. We can't give up this opportunity. Hinata Rakizuki was quite calm, then looked at Muen, and said in a flattering way, besides, I believe that when there is a big mission in the future, we will gather under the captain again. The separation is only temporary. Captain, You will still need me in the future, right? Of course. Nguyen laughed. The friendship between the 4 members of Nguyen's team was honed between life and death. It doesn't mean that, if the 3 of them lead the team alone, this kind of feeling will disappear. Even if Nguyen wants the 3 of them to defect from Konoha now, there is a great possibility that the 3 of them will defect with Nguyen. This is the friendship between the 4. Me too, Nguyen. No matter what you do in the future, if you dare to leave me, don't blame me for fighting with you. Inosuke Shida said quickly. Huan, what about you? Nguyen looked at Kurama Huan, who did not express his opinion. I still want to stay with Nguyen. Kurama Huan lowered her head and whispered. Then she raised her head and saw everyone's eyes looking at her. She was startled again and said quickly, I mean, I'm the same as them. Nguyen must not leave me behind when he has a mission in the future. After saying this, Kurama Huan breathed a sigh of relief, and then a sense of loss inexplicably rose in her heart. In this case, I will reply to the 3rd generation. Nguyen said, while taking out a scroll, and took out 2 weapons from it, saying, this is the spoils of the 3 of you. It is very good stuff. Who wants it? It turned out to be the explosive sword flying foam and long sword sewing needle seized during the Wave Country mission. My secret method does not require the sword, so I don't want it. Inosuke Shida said quickly. It's the same for me. My soft fist does not require these. Hinata Rakizuki also refused. Seeing this, Nguyen looked around and said, then Huan will take one, and the remaining one will be our team's gift to Kushina. I don't want it either. Seeing that no one wanted it, Kurama Huan also wanted to refuse. Pick one, Huan. Your secret technique has reached a bottleneck at this stage, and weapons can improve your attack ability. Nguyen saw that Kurama Huan wanted to refuse, and said hurriedly. At this time, seeing that Kushina on the side also wanted to refuse, Nguyen hurriedly said, Kushina, take it too. This sword is not bad. It caused us a lot of trouble at the time. If used well, it can greatly improve our strength and make Minato feel more at ease on the battlefield. Seeing Kushina looking at him, Minato said, just take what Nguyen gave. Just like that, the 2 girls muttered to the side for a while. Kurama Huan unexpectedly chose explosive sword flying foam, while the hot-tempered Uzumaki Kushina chose long sword stitch. Please recommend. Thank you. Chapter 77 Appointment as Vice Dean. At night, the streets of Konoha were quiet and there were no pedestrians. The people coming out of the barbecue restaurant did not exchange too many pleasantries, but went home. Nguyen had 2 patients waiting for him at home. Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato went back together, of course, and Minato no longer had to see them off secretly like before. Kushina was seen walking in front, playing with her new weapon longsword sewing needle, and her fluttering red hair stunned Minato Namikaze behind her for a moment. Ever since Minato said it's beautiful hair, Uzumaki Kushina no longer thought her red hair was annoying, but took care of it carefully every day. This was the red hair that connected her fate with Minato. Minato, Sister Huan likes Nguyen very much, right? Uzumaki Kushina, who was walking in front, suddenly turned around and said with a smile, ah, really? I didn't see that. Minato was stunned by what Kushina said and shook his head. Really, are all you men wooden? It's obvious, can't you see it? Kushina said speechlessly, I must help Sister Huan. How can I help you with this? Minato was confused and asked. Haha. Kushina seemed to have thought of something, laughed and said, you will know when we come back, after completing the mission, then it's up to me. Minato and Kushina seemed to be planning something, while Nguyen returned home and quickly took Naoki Akimichi and Hidegoto to the Konoha hospital. Tsunade, who was supposed to go home, was waiting for them. After arranging the 2, Tsunade kept Nguyen, who was about to go home. Of course, Tsunade didn't need to arrange Naoki Akimichi and Hidegoto herself. She stayed in the hospital so late, just to wait for Nguyen. Does the village have any tasks for you now? Tsunade asked. No, Master's wife. The 3rd generation just split our team, and hasn't had time to assign me a task. Nguyen asked in confusion. Master's wife, is there anything going on? Has the team been split? That's great. Come to the hospital tomorrow. These 2 people still need your care for at least half a year. Tsunade looked a little serious, and then her voice was a little cold. Your master and I are going to start investigating the grandfather's matter. Okay, teacher, I'm looking forward to it. But what does the village say? Muen immediately agreed. Now that he has White Zetsu in his hands, he is just short of research time. It's best to stay in the village. I will explain to the third generation. It just so happens that the hospital is short of people now. Tsunade said, come tomorrow morning, and you will be the vice president of Konoha Hospital in the future. In this way, Muen will bid farewell to the life of going out on missions for a period of time. This is a rare opportunity for Muen. After returning home, Muen did not rest, but practiced as usual. The practice of bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique and spirit condensation technique has reached the limit for the improvement of body and spirit, but Muen did not stop practicing. Because Muen found that when his body was strong to the limit, he continued to practice bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique, and the conversion rate of his own chakra nature into chakra for performing corpse vein ninjutsu was slowly increasing. The same was true for practicing spirit condensation technique. This means that, if he persists in practicing, one day in the future, Muen may also be able to perform corpse vein ninjutsu and illusion techniques at will. Of course, Muen insisted on practicing bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique at the beginning not because of this, but to improve his ability to control chakra. When running bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique, a very small part of the chakra in Muen's body will change in nature. This very small amount of chakra that has changed in nature, Muen could only sense it before and could not accurately control it. But now this situation has changed a little. Muen continued to practice the bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique for half a quarter of an hour. When sweat broke out on his forehead, a bone bead slowly formed on his fingertips. This was the corpse vein ninjutsu. Of course, this was far from being used in actual combat. Now that he could perform the corpse vein ninjutsu, on the one hand, he benefited from the significant improvement in his chakra control ability, and on the other hand, the chakra conversion rate had indeed increased to a certain extent. Muen never thought that the more ninjutsu he knew, the more powerful he would be, so he did not overstep his bounds in the corpse vein ninjutsu. It was just that Muen had an idea in his mind that when his chakra could change the nature of various yin-yang escape at will, he would not be far from understanding the essence of chakra. Because Muen believed that yin-yang escape would be closer to the essence of chakra. The 5 basic attribute changes, as well as sword escape and wood escape, were just specific applications of chakra developed downward. After the training, Muen had to go into the basement to study White Zetsu, and then it was time for Muen to rest. Muen's research on White Zetsu was not to dismember it directly, to study its physiological structure or the cells of Hashirama in its body. Instead, he directly extracted the chakra from White Zetsu, and then used the spiritual mist to conduct a deep induction to explore the mystery. Muen first took out the disabled White Zetsu. This White Zetsu was extremely unstable. If Muen had not done sufficient treatment in the early stage, it would have turned into a big tree. When Muen completely extracted the chakra, the already weak White Zetsu completely lost its breath. Then, Muen's research on White Zetsu began. This is a long process, and there will be no results in a short time. The next day, Muen got up early, ate a breakfast he made, and went to the hospital. Today is the first day of taking office as the vice president, so I'm sorry to be late. When Muen arrived at the hospital, he first waited for Tsunade to arrive in the dean's office. I have already explained to the third generation that I will come less frequently unless it is an emergency in the future. The hospital will be handed over to you for the time being. Tsunade came late, probably just came from the Hokage's office, and said quite tiredly at this time. Don't worry, master's wife. Muen said a little tiredly. The research on the White Zetsu chakra was indeed very fruitful. Although he was very tired, he was still very excited. After coming out of the dean's office, Muen first visited Akimichi Naoki and Ito Hidego, and used the spiritual mist to reduce the conflict between the body and the new organs, to help the two quickly adapt and recover. According to Muen's estimation, it will take at least half a year. In this way, Muen's career as the vice president of the hospital began. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 78, Enlightenment Under the Tree. Since he took office as the vice president of Konoha Hospital, Muen has become the #1 otaku in Konoha. Every day, he is either at home or in the hospital. This kind of life is boring to others, but Muen enjoys it. Muen thought that it would be a very long process to produce results in the research of white Zetsu. But the result was just the opposite. In less than 2 months, Muen successfully studied the method of practicing wood release. The chakra extracted from the first disabled white Zetsu mainly contains 2 attributes, one of which is the wood attribute. In Muen's opinion, it is determined by the nature of white Zetsu that is inclined to plants. After seeing the wood release chakra, Muen's first thought was to find a way to practice the wood release bloodline. Muen knew that, in order to practice the wood release bloodline, the chakra of the body must be transformed into wood attribute chakra through the nature change, and then the body is transformed by this wood attribute chakra. When the body adapts to the transformation, the wood release bloodline is successfully practiced. Muen knew that the wood attribute chakra was a combination of the earth attribute and the water attribute, so Muen believed that, as long as the combination ratio of the 2 chakras was figured out, the wood attribute chakra property change would be able to be achieved stably. And to figure it out, all you need to do is reversely decompose the wood attribute chakra. This step was the fastest in Muen's research. With the constantly strengthened chakra sensing and chakra control ability, Muen had completed it in less than 10 days and obtained the ratio of the 2 attribute chakras combined into the wood attribute chakra. But in the next step, a problem arose in the process of combining the 2 attributes into the wood attribute chakra. When manipulating the combination reaction of the earth attribute chakra and the water attribute chakra, the strong attribute restraint of the earth attribute chakra on the water attribute chakra made the 2 attributes incompatible, even if Muen himself had a strong control ability. Later, after Muen completely decomposed a portion of the wood attribute chakra into the earth attribute and the water attribute, he tried to synthesize it into a portion of the wood attribute, but failed. In other words, even if it is the same portion of chakra, its decomposition is irreversible. When the research reached a deadlock, Muen thought of the practice process of sword escape. The sword attribute is also a combination of 2 mutually restraining attributes. The practice of the sword attribute was successful with a short sword as the medium. Then, can the practice of wood escape be the same? Then, Muen fell into a crazy state. Referring to the 2 chakra inscribed techniques on the short sword as the medium for the practice of sword escape, he successfully studied the techniques required for wood escape. This step is still very simple. Just replace the intersection of thunder and earth with the intersection of earth and water. Afterwards, Muen found a piece of wood and drew the corresponding techniques on it with water attribute chakra and earth attribute chakra respectively. Muen's ability to control chakra has greatly improved compared to the past, and this step is naturally much easier than before. However, when Muen was full of excitement and used the wood with the inscribed techniques as the medium to merge the 2 attributes of chakra in a fixed ratio, he still failed. Even the smallest amount of chakra did not succeed, but caused the piece of wood to explode. This hit Muen hard, but Muen only thought that the wood was not strong enough for the tree species was not good. After that, Muen found all kinds of wood, basically all the species that could be found in Konoha. But the result of the experiment was still not ideal, and it ended in failure, which undoubtedly hit Muen again. Muen still had a strong yearning for wood release. Muen knew from the beginning that, unless he cultivated into the 6 path sage, the average person could only cultivate 2 bloodline limits, which was almost the limit. If he cultivated more, his body would definitely not be able to bear it, and his genes would collapse. After practicing sword release, Muen never crossed the cultivation methods of other bloodline limits. Even if Muen met many bloodline ninjas during his mission, Muen did not study them. It was because there was always a voice in Muen's heart saying, what if I might come into contact with wood release in the future? The position of the other bloodline limit was always reserved for wood release. Now he has indeed come into contact with wood release, but he has hit a wall on the road of studying the method of cultivation. You can imagine how disappointed Muen is. Muen put away his depressed mood and walked out of the underground laboratory. He went outside and looked at the bright moon in the sky, feeling melancholy. He walked straight to a tree in the yard and fell asleep on the recliner under the tree. In the early morning, when the sun began to rise, looking at the dew on the tips of the grass in the yard and listening to the chirping birds on the tree, Muen felt a fresh and vibrant breath coming over him. At this moment, the fog in his mind was split by a flash of lightning, and an unprecedented light shone in his heart. Muen already understood the reason for his failure. The wood attribute is a vibrant attribute. How can it be integrated into a dead wood? Think about the characteristics of the first generation. In addition to wood release, isn't there a strong vitality inherited from Ashura, the son of the Six Paths sage? Although he understood this principle, Muen didn't have time to conduct experiments anymore. He had to go to the hospital to work. After all, this was the job assigned by Tsunade, and there couldn't be any mistakes. Muen seemed absent-minded all day. When there were wounded patients who needed him to deal with, he had to wash his face with cold water first to cheer himself up, for fear of accidents. In this way, when it was time to get off work, Muen rushed back home without stopping for a moment. Muen, Kaintang has completed the training task you assigned. Can I come to see you in the evening? Hiruna said behind Muen. Okay. Muen almost didn't hear what Hiruna said clearly. Looking at Muen who had disappeared, Hiruna said helplessly, you are still so impatient, even though you are already the vice president. Really? Muen carefully carved the spell all over the small tree with earth attribute and water attribute chakra, then took a deep breath, combined the two attribute chakras in a fixed ratio on the tree in front of him, and soon the tree began to emit wood attribute chakra. Muen suppressed his ecstasy and carefully controlled the flow of wood attribute chakra into his body. When he felt a tingling sensation all over his body, he stopped practicing. Muen was sure that he had successfully researched the practice of wood release. Please recommend. Thank you everyone. Chapter 79 Sword Escape and Wood Escape. After a long while, Muen's excitement slowly calmed down. After all, not everyone is called Senju Hashirama, and even if you have cultivated the wood release bloodline limit, it does not mean that you are invincible. The most typical example is a ninja named Yamato later. He has strength but not much. Compared with Senju Hashirama, he is simply a poor version of wood release. Of course, Muen now has some understanding of the reason why the wood release between Senju Hashirama and Yamato is so different. This understanding is summarized in the process of comparing the use of sword release and creating and practicing the wood release bloodline secret method. One of the differences is a different total amount of chakra between the two. It is obvious that the huge amount of chakra possessed by Senju Hashirama is one of the main reasons for the difference in the power of the ninjutsu between the two. The second difference is the increase of yang release to wood release. From the actual effect of ninjutsu, Yamato's wood release is more rigid, while Senju Hashirama's wood release is obviously more vital. Of course, this difference is only a guess at this stage, and it needs to be confirmed after Muen cultivates the wood release bloodline limit. When Muen first cultivated the sword release chakra and used it to cover the short sword to attack, he found that, although it was very strong, it was far from the power of sword cutting everything in Hatake Tsukumo's hand. For this reason, Muen had specially asked Hatake Tsukumo for advice. Hatake Tsukumo did not say much, but showed his sword release without reservation in front of Muen, allowing Muen to experience it himself. In Muen's perception, Hatake Tsukumo's sword release had something different, which was murderous aura and the will to cut off everything. This surprised Muen greatly. In the subsequent communication with Hatake Tsukumo, he learned that this was something Hatake Tsukumo naturally mastered in the process of practicing swordsmanship. He didn't know what this power was and how to practice it. But with Muen's understanding of chakra, he soon understood that it was the power of yin release that manifested the intangible things such as will and murderous aura and blessed them on sword release. This also made Muen side Hatake Tsukumo's talent and strength. If he had not died young, and if he had been given enough time to cultivate the sword escape bloodline limit, it is possible that Konoha would have another god of the ninja world in the future. The blessing of yin escape on sword escape is a reason why Muen guessed that yang escape can also bless wood escape. Perhaps with the training of sword escape and wood escape bloodlines, Nguyen's research on yin-yang escape will also enter a new stage. Just as Nguyen was enjoying the future, there was a knock on the door outside the courtyard. When he opened the door, it was his first student, Hiruna's son, Kyan Tang, who was now 8 years old. Brother Nguyen, what are you doing? Are you practicing ninjutsu? After Kyan Tang walked into the yard, he looked around for a while and said with interest, you want to learn ninjutsu, right? Nguyen saw Kyan Tang's thoughts at a glance and said with a smile, have you completed the training tasks I assigned? I will check later. Nguyen was very satisfied with Kyan Tang, his cousin and student. In the past 2 years, he has really stayed away from ninjutsu and insisted on chakra induction control training. For a child, it is very precious to be able to endure the boredom and tedium. It's all done, Brother Nguyen. Kyan Tang looked at Nguyen expectantly and said, don't worry, as long as your chakra control and induction level can meet the standards, I will teach you ninjutsu. For a long time, Nguyen has learned ninjutsu secretly in the process of fighting with the enemy through the spiritual mist, and the ninjutsu in Kato Dan's secret room has led to a lot of ninjutsu reserves in Nguyen. Although he rarely uses it himself, it is still very easy to match a good set of ninjutsu to teach Kyan Tang. Yeah, that's great. Kyan Tang jumped up excitedly. Then when do we start the assessment? I can't wait. Why rush? It's getting late. Let's eat together first. Nguyen shook his head and said. Just like that, Nguyen pulled Kyan Tang, who looked reluctant, and started to work in the kitchen. Brother Nguyen, many students are graduating from school this year. Kyan Tang said while picking vegetables, especially that Uchiha hero, who actually laughed at me for never being able to graduate. It really pissed me off. Well, are you also eager to go to the battlefield? Nguyen was calm on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. I remember that Uchiha hero is the same age as you this year, right? Yes. There are even more powerful ones. A 4-year-old child came to our class today, and he is more powerful than many classmates. He is the son of the Konoha White Fang, named Hokage Kakashi. The teacher said that, if nothing unexpected happens, he will graduate next year. Kyan Tang said with a little envy, I also want to learn ninjutsu quickly, graduate early and become a ninja. Don't even think about it. I've already told Aunt Hiruna that you will never graduate before the age of 12. Aunt Hiruna has also agreed. Nguyen ruthlessly killed Kyan Tang's idea. You can't do this, Brother Nguyen. Kyan Tang stopped picking vegetables when he heard this. He was a little confused, and his heart was full of loss. Then, she said stubbornly, even Brother Nguyen can't influence the decision of the village. As long as I perform well, the school will agree to let me graduate. Don't you know? The school principal is my master. I can't decide for others, but you are the only one who can make the decision. Nguyen went on, now is the stage of laying the foundation. Why are you in such a hurry to graduate? In my opinion, no matter how short the manpower is now, you should not be allowed to graduate early. Kyan Tang no longer had any expectations of graduating early after hearing this, and vented his resentment on the vegetables in his hands. Seeing this, Nguyen decided to give him hope and said, okay, it's not that there is no way. I'll give you a chance. As long as you can pass my assessment, I won't stop you from graduating early. Hearing this, Kyan Tang's eyes lit up instantly, and he nodded fiercely and said, Brother Nguyen, just wait and see. I will be able to pass your assessment soon. Looking at Kyan Tang, whose spirit and energy were quickly restored, Nguyen shook his head and thought to himself, he is still a child after all. It is right not to let him graduate. In the test of chakra control ability and sensing ability after dinner, Kyan Tang met Nguyen's requirements excellently. This also made Nguyen very pleased. Then Nguyen taught him the bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique. Chakra control and sensing ability training were prepared for this. Chapter 80 The Secret of the Thousand Hands. Bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique and spirit condensation technique are the best secret techniques that Nguyen knows of that can lay a solid foundation for ninjas. They are very meaningful for the practice of ninjutsu, taijutsu, or genjutsu. The only drawback is that it is very difficult to practice. Tang's talent can be regarded as extremely excellent, but he also practiced attentively for 2 years under Muen's guidance before he barely reached the standard of practice. Bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique is a secret technique created by Muen, based on the corpse vein bloodline ninjutsu, and Muen has never treasured it. There was a precedent of passing it on to others, and at this time, it was passed on to Tang again. However, spirit condensation technique comes from the bloodline of the Kurama clan, which involves the secret of Kurama's bloodline. In order to avoid conflicts with the Kurama clan, Muen did not pass it on. Looking at Tang with a frown on his face, Muen pretended to be calm and said, "What's wrong? You can't even learn such a simple secret technique? You still want to graduate early?" Sure enough, after being told this by Muen, Tang was like a cat with its fur blown up. He instantly ignited his fighting spirit and said, "Humph. How can a mere secret technique stump me? Brother Muen, just wait for my good news. I will soon succeed in practicing it." After sending Tang away, Muen practiced for around as planned, and then entered the basement again to study Beizet. The research on wood release has come to an end. The research on yang release should be more fruitful. Muen is looking forward to it. The next day, after Muen came to the hospital, he still didn't see Tsunade. It seems that Tsunade has really handed over the affairs of the hospital to Muen, and has devoted herself to the investigation of the village. Muen thinks it is better to tell Tsunade about the research results of Beizetsu and the successful research on the method of practicing wood release. Although it doesn't matter if you don't say it, this kind of notification is more of a respect, which is conducive to maintaining the friendship between the two sides. Therefore, after get off work that day, Muen came to Katodan's house and found the couple. After hearing that Muen had developed a method to practice wood release, the two were stunned and speechless for a while. Will there be many wood release ninjas in Konoha in the future? Katodan was the first to react and said hurriedly. When Katodan thought about being able to improve Konoha's overall strength, he could not hide his excitement. After all, he was a man who had the dream of being a Hokage. It's not that simple. This kind of secret technique is very difficult to practice. Muen hurriedly explained. First of all, you have to be young, and the control and sensing ability of chakra also has very high requirements. After all, the depiction of the technique must be done by yourself. Is there an age limit? Katodan said regretfully. If there is no age limit, no matter how difficult it is possible to succeed in practice with the accumulation of time. Of course, for example, if you come to practice, it will take at least 10 or 20 years. Muen said as a matter of course, it has to be when you are not performing tasks and concentrate on practicing. Is it so difficult? Katodan said with some regret. This is wood release. How can it be so easy to master it? Tsunade had recovered from her shock and rolled her eyes at Katodan. Turning back, she said to Muen, wood release means a lot to the village. Once people know that you have this secret technique, it's hard to say what will happen. There are many ambitious people in Konoha. You must keep it secret until your own strength and influence reach a certain level. Muen was very surprised to hear Tsunade say this. Muen thought Tsunade would persuade Muen to hand over the secret technique to the village. It seems that through the secret investigation of the village during this period, Tsunade has also become wary of the village. Then, Muen turned around and looked at Katodan. If it were before, I might still try to persuade you to pass the secret technique to the village. But now, facing Muen's gaze, Katodan also shook his head and said in a low voice, do as your master's wife said. At this time, Muen pondered for a moment, looked up at Tsunade, and said sincerely, Master's wife, how about passing this secret technique to the Senju clan? The Senju clan can't afford such an important relationship now. Tsunade looked at Muen with some surprise, and then said with some emotion, if you have this intention, just teach it to Tang. It is not easy for him to arouse suspicion if he cultivates wood release. Aren't you Tang's teacher now? Tsunade's words made Muen a little confused. Perhaps sensing Muen's doubts, Tsunade explained. Tang is a member of the Senju clan. Hiruna's husband is an ordinary person in the Senju family. He is of the same generation as me. Muen always knew that the relationship between Hiruna and Tsunade must be unusual, but he didn't expect it to be so unusual. The Senju clan is in trouble. Now they have either changed their surnames and completely changed their appearance, or they have hidden their surnames and become ordinary people, Tsunade said with some emotion and loneliness. Tsunade's words surprised Muen, and he wanted to explore the secrets. But seeing that Tsunade had kept silent, he was embarrassed to ask more. Comics are always comics. Muen deeply felt at this time that the real world really hides more secrets. I originally had this idea. Since Kaientang is a member of the Senju clan, it couldn't be better. Muen then looked at Katodan and said, "It just so happens that I have something to ask the master. That is, don't let Kaientang graduate early. Don't worry. I, the principal, can still protect one person." Katodan felt a little heavy at this time. As the principal of Konoha Ninja School, Katodan was the one who least wanted these children to graduate early and enter the battlefield. Therefore, as the principal, Katodan once did not hesitate to increase the difficulty of the assessment for early graduation. However, the pressure from the upper echelons of the village was increasing, and even he had to compromise. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. "Sometimes, I would rather I was still fighting on the battlefield," Katodan said helplessly. Looking at the depressed Katodan, Muen didn't know what to say for a while. "What are you thinking? You just want to do some easy work," Tsunade said with a smile. "If you leave, who can withstand the pressure from the upper level? The situation may be even worse at that time, so your persistence is still necessary. This is your battlefield now." Hearing what Tsunade said, Katodan laughed and became full of fighting spirit again. "Yes, for those children, I have to continue to persevere." Chapter 81 Konoha Shadow. After seeing Muen off, Tsunade and Katodan returned to the house again. Seeing Tsunade looking out the window without the relaxed look on her face, Katodan's expression gradually became serious. He walked to the window and stood side by side with Tsunade and asked, "Tsunade, have you found any new problems? I hope my worries are unnecessary." Tsunade shook her head, her voice a little low. "When talking about the Senju clan just now, I suddenly thought of a key point. If some people in the village want to study wood release, then the best research object should be the Senju clan." "No way." Hearing this, Katodan was also shocked, and then comforted. "Don't worry, the first and second generations are the cornerstones of the village. I believe those people will not be so crazy anyway." Seeing that Tsunade was still a little distracted, Katodan continued, "If it doesn't work, we will start investigating in this direction tomorrow, so that you can feel more at ease." "Let's do it." Tsunade exhaled lightly, her face still heavy as she said, "The Senju clan has already been implicated because of my grandfather and his brother, and now they dare not even keep their surnames. If anything happens again, our branch will really become the sinners of the family. Don't worry, don't think too much, nothing will happen. Even if something really happens, we will seek justice together." Katodan hugged Tsunade in his arms and comforted her softly. In a secret place somewhere in Konoha, Shimura Danzo was listening to the work report of the root. A ninja who was about 30 years old, wearing sunglasses, a turtleneck, and wrapped himself tightly, bowed his head, and said to Danzo, "Danzo, someone in the village has been investigating the wood release research project recently." "Oh, who is it? They should not be able to escape the surveillance of your insect, Yuto," Danzo asked calmly. He didn't seem to be worried about this matter at all. "Of course, the one investigating is Katodan and Tsunade," Abure Muto said with some pride. Upon hearing this, Danzo shook his head nonchalantly and said, "So it's the princess of Konoha. It seems that she has finally noticed something, so she is not too useless. However, what can the couple find out? Don't worry too much, the experiment cannot stop." "But Danzo-sama, the loss of the experiment is already great," a staff member in a white research suit said. "So far, no one has been able to obtain the power of wood release through the cells of Hashirama-sama. Even the Senju people can only hold on for a little longer. Compared to obtaining the power of wood release, this loss is nothing." Danzo did not waver at all, and continued, "Don't hesitate. Everything we do is for the future of Konoha, and these sacrifices are worth it." "Yes, Danzo-sama." Everyone responded in high spirits. When Muen returned home, he saw Kaientang waiting at the door. Bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique is not so easy to learn. Before learning it, Kyan had to come to Muen every night to receive Muen's guidance. How is the secret technique going? Muen looked at Kyan, still a little bit unbelieving that the boy in front of him was a Senju people. Then, he remembered that Kyan's chakra attributes were water and earth, and thought that maybe it was really destined. Brother Muen, it's so difficult. Kyan pursed his lips, and then encouraged himself, but I will definitely succeed in practicing. That's good. Muen nodded and said, it's good to have confidence. Since you are so confident, then I will teach you another secret technique. Ah. Brother Muen, please don't. Kyan wailed. In this way, when will I be able to practice ninjutsu? Are you sure? This is a practice method of wood release. Don't you want to learn it? Muen looked at Kyan and said with narrowed eyes. What? Kyan was shocked by the sudden information and said in disbelief. Brother Muen, that's wood release. Are you kidding? Of course. Do you think I would lie to you? Muen said seriously. Kyan swallowed his saliva and said, then, I want to learn. I must learn. Then, Muen told Kyan some precautions, mainly about confidentiality. After that, it was time for the two to teach. In the next half month, everything in Konoha seemed very calm. Muen's life was as usual, without any waves. During the day, he was in Konoha Hospital, and at night he taught Kyan how to practice two secret techniques. What was strange was that Kyan's learning of bone strengthening and body fitness technique was extremely difficult and his progress was slow. However, he learned the wood release bloodline very quickly. In just half a month, he had completely understood the entire secret technique, and he was just short of practicing it. This made Muen angry for a while, thinking that this kid did it on purpose. However, later he found that Kyan was very serious and did not slack off when learning bone strengthening and body fitness technique, so Muen had to attribute it all to a problem of talent. That night, Kyan found another small tree in the courtyard of Muen's house and began to carve the technique. It was fine at first, but as time went on, as the control of chakra became more and more demanding, Kyan's engraving speed became slower and slower. Suddenly, he failed to engrave, and all his efforts tonight were wasted. How is it? Now you know the significance of the training in the past 2 years. If it weren't for the hard work in the past 2 years, you can only watch the secret technique in front of you now. Muen said seriously, that's it for today. Adjust your state and continue tomorrow. In your case, the success rate will not be too high. Fortunately, as long as you engrave correctly once, you can start practicing. Trying a few more times will always work. Okay, Brother Muen. Kyan seemed quite excited. I'll come again tomorrow. I believe I will succeed soon. The next morning, when Muen rushed to the hospital, he found that Tsunade had rarely come to the office. Master's wife, how come you have time to come today? Muen said in a strange way. Those bugs are very vigilant. The investigation during this period has made them alert. It is difficult to gain anything in a short period of time. We can only take a long-term view. Tsunade said very unwillingly, we can only investigate slowly in the future. But there is still good news. Your master has completely adapted to the new organ. The transplant operation is a complete success. Tsunade wiped the haze on her face and said happily. Really? That's great. Muen also said happily. This means that Kato-dan has fully recovered his strength. Even if he becomes stronger than before, Muen believes it. Chapter 82 Muen blind date. While Muen was working hard in the hospital, Namake's Minato and Uzumaki Kushina had completed their missions and returned to the village. Since she could go out to do missions, Uzumaki Kushina seemed to want to make up for all the missions she had not done in the past 2 years, and she took Minato on missions seamlessly. Minato, I'm going to go find Sister Huan. Kushina said to Minato after returning to the village. Every time she came back from a mission, Kushina would go find Kurama Huan first. If she's not here, will we continue to do the missions like before? Minato asked. Well, it's been more than 2 months. Kushina thought for a while and said with a smile, if Sister Huan is still not here, we will wait for her to come back in the village, and we will also take a rest. Okay, then I won't take any more missions for now. As soon as Minato finished speaking, Kushina ran away quickly. Since the kidnapping incident, Kushina's personality has become more and more cheerful in the process of contact with Minato. Kushina was very lucky this time. Not long after walking, she saw a woman carrying a big knife on the road ahead. The knife was the explosive blade flying foam. The woman was tall, long-legged and had a good figure. Who else could it be but Kurama Kian? Kurama Kian had just returned from a mission and was walking home. Sister Kian. Uzumaki Kushina was very happy and greeted her from a distance. This was the first time the two had met in more than 2 months. Kurama Kian turned around and saw that it was Uzumaki Kushina and was very happy, saying, "Kushina, you are back from the mission too. What are you doing here?" "I came here to find you." Kushina had a smiling expression and then said, "Let's go. I'll take you to a place." Without waiting for Kurama Kian to agree, she pulled her away. "Kushina, where are you taking me?" Kurama Kian said helplessly. Upon hearing this, Kushina slapped her head and said with a smile, "I forgot to tell you." Then, she leaned close to Kurama Huan's ear and said something. Kurama Huan's neck turned red in an instant, and she stuttered, This is not good. There's nothing wrong, Sister Huan, just listen to me. Let's go wash the paint on our faces first." Kushina pulled Kurama Huan away with a heroic attitude. "Let's not talk about the things here for now." Muen checked the conditions of Akimichi Naoki and Ito Hidego in the hospital as usual, and found that the two were recovering well. The conflict between the body and the organs is getting smaller and smaller, and the goal of being discharged from the hospital in half a year should be achievable. Afterwards, Muen went around the wards one by one, basically checking every injured person to make sure there were no problems. After this round, it was almost noon. When Muen was about to go to the hospital cafeteria to have a working lunch, he found that Minato Namikaze came over and said hesitantly, "Muen, do you have time? Let's go out together at noon. If you have anything to say, just tell me. I don't see how busy the hospital is now. If it's not urgent, we can talk about it in the evening." Muen was very confused. Minato had never been so hesitant before. Before Minato could reply, Tsunade's voice came over. "What can you do? Don't you still have me in the hospital? I'll give you half a day off in the afternoon. Let's go." Tsunade came out from the other side, followed by Uzumaki Kushina. Just like that, Muen was pulled out by Minato Namikaze with a confused look on his face. "Kushina, what did you say to Dean Tsunade? She gave me half a day off so readily?" Muen asked in confusion. Kushina chuckled and said a little embarrassedly, "I said you were going to a blind date this afternoon, and Lady Tsunade agreed without saying anything, and asked me a lot of questions." Hearing this, Muen's mind was full of black lines, and he said, "What did they ask you?" Kushina imitated Tsunade's tone of voice and said, "Whose girl is it? How old is she? How does she look?" These questions. You too, if you have something to say, can't you just say it directly? Why do you have to find such a lame excuse? Muen said helplessly. "I'm not lying. I asked you out, just to go on a blind date. Didn't Minato tell you just now?" Kushina looked at Minato and asked in confusion, "Minato, didn't you tell Muen?" "I haven't had time to tell you yet," Minato said awkwardly on the side. Muen didn't say anything and was ready to run. However, before he ran 2 steps, he was caught by Minato. Such problems will occur when you are not as fast and responsive as others. "You too, I'm only 14 years old. Do I need to find a partner so early?" Muen said helplessly. "TSK, let alone 14 years old, even if he is only 4 years old, you must meet this person today," Kushina said with a smile. In this way, Muen was half forced by the two to go to today's blind date. The girl on the blind date called herself Ayako. She had black and beautiful hair, a tall figure, a fair face, regular features, bright eyes, and a stunning beauty. Not long after the dinner started, Minato and Kushina found an excuse to slip away, leaving the space for Muen and Ayako. Of course, Muen knew that Minato and Kushina did not go far, but were always observing this place not far away. "Muen, do you have someone you like?" Ayako asked shyly. "Not yet." Muen thought for a while and answered. Ayako showed some disappointment at first, then she returned to normal and said, then there must be a lot of girls around you who like you. After all, you are so powerful. There shouldn't be. Muen said uncertainly, I'm usually very busy, either doing tasks or doing research, and I don't meet many women. In this way, the two chatted one by one. When the dinner was gradually coming to an end, Muen suddenly said, let's go, Huan. I'll take you home. Ah. Ayako, or Kurama Huan, on the side, panicked instantly, lowered her head and said shyly, Muen, did you see it? Haha. Of course, although you changed your clothes and washed off the oil paint on your face, a person's aura will not change. Muen laughed and then said helplessly, come on, we have been teammates for such a long time. Do you think I can't recognize you? Hearing this, Kurama Huan lowered her head awkwardly and her hands nervously clasped her nails together. Looking at the beauty in front of him, Muen walked up to her, took one of Kurama Huan's hands, and said, let's go, I'll take you home. You just came back from a mission today, so go home and have a good rest first. The recent chapters are a bit dull, please forgive me. Chapter 83 Jiraiya returns to the village. Kurama Huan ran back home, smiling widely, and greeted Kurama Yunkang and Kurama Huang in the yard. Father, mother, I'm back from a mission. Before she finished speaking, she had already disappeared. Are you so happy to come back from a mission? Kurama Yunkang looked at Kurama Huang in confusion. I wanted to ask her about the mission. She must have encountered something happy. Kurama Huang said thoughtfully, didn't you see that the oil paint on your girl's face is gone? Didn't she always like her previous captain? Could it be? Kurama Yunkang and Kurama Huang looked at each other and had already made some guesses. Without mentioning the guesses of the Kurama couple, after Muen sent Kurama Huan to the Kurama clan's residence, he turned around and said to the woods not far away, Minato, Kushina, come out. You don't have to hide anymore. Minato and Kushina walked out from behind a big tree with embarrassed expressions on their faces. Muen, what a coincidence, you are here too. Kushina's eyes rolled around, but she didn't dare to look at Muen. What a coincidence, it's all your fault. Muen couldn't help but scold. What a stupid idea. Hey, Muen, don't be so ungrateful. Wasn't the blind date very successful? You got a girlfriend for nothing, and you're still not satisfied? Kushina couldn't stand the scolding and immediately refuted. Then she pretended to be a hero and said, when you are together in the future, you have to thank me. Okay, thank you, great hero Kushina, great hero Minato. Muen pretended to be a little helpless and replied, Muen, you don't know how nervous Minato and I were just now, for fear that you would reject Sister Huan. Then I would really mean well, but end up with bad results. Uzumaki Kushina said with some lingering fear, tell me, have you liked Sister Huan for a long time? Having lived who lives, Muen did not pursue love too much. He had some feelings for Kurama Huan, but it was definitely not to the extent of liking her. But isn't there a saying that goes, when a girl chases a boy, it's only a thin layer of gauze between them, but when a boy chases a girl, it's only a mountain between them. When Kurama Huan took a step forward, Muen followed suit. However, after holding hands, Muen was in a good mood, and the roots he had planted in the ninja world became deeper. Afterwards, the three of them chatted with each other and went home. After Minato Namikaze returned home, he found Jiraiya sitting in his house. He was a little surprised and asked, Teacher Jiraiya, when did you come back? I came back not long ago. I saw you and that little red-haired girl together. I didn't want to disturb you, so I went back to your house first. Jiraiya teased Minato with a frivolous look on his face. Minato blushed and introduced, Teacher, that's Uzumaki Kushina, a very kind girl. The little girl from the Uzumaki family? Looking at that red hair, I already guessed it. Jiraiya said with some emotion, I must treat her well in the future. She is also a miserable person. Some things you will know naturally in the future. It's not good to know now. Seeing Minato's puzzled face, Jiraiya did not explain too much. Teacher, are you not leaving this time? Minato did not dwell too much on the issue of Kushina, and asked instead. I won't leave in the short term. Starting tomorrow, I will teach you some of my methods. You don't need to go on missions recently. I will explain to the village. Don't worry. Jiraiya made a decision directly. Okay, teacher. Minato also agreed. Just like that, Jiraiya settled down in Konoha. In fact, Jiraiya was originally going to take a look at Minato as a disciple and then leave. After all, it was too early to teach Minato some of his methods now. But this time, when he met Minato, he found that his foundation was much more solid than he imagined. So Jiraiya changed his plan. After passing on the methods to Minato Namikaze, he would be able to travel the world without any worries. In the evening, Jiraiya, who returned in a low-key manner, met the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. Jiraiya is back. Have you dealt with your personal affairs? The third Hokage was still very happy about the return of his disciple. After all, the current situation is tense, and every extra strength of the village is a confidence. It has been dealt with. Jiraiya said calmly. That's good. The village is in a turbulent time. After finishing personal affairs, it's just right to go back to the village to do something. The third Hokage nodded slightly and said, don't be too happy, old man. I still have some things to do. I won't stay in the village for too long. Seeing the joy on the face of the third Hokage, Jiraiya was quite helpless and continued, don't you have Orochimaru and Tsunade to help you? It's enough to have them here. Hearing this, the third Hokage's face darkened, took a puff of cigarette, shook his head and said, Tsunade seems to have some things recently. When you are free, you should go to see the couple and comfort them. What can they do? Jiraiya frowned. For this request, Jiraiya was unwilling from the bottom of his heart. With the abilities of the couple, is there anything that can stump them? For Jiraiya's question, the third Hokage didn't know how to answer for a while, and could only smoke and remain silent. Seeing this, Jiraiya didn't ask any more questions, but just said, I will stay in the village in the next 2 months. If you have any problems, just come to Minato's house to find me. After that, Jiraiya didn't stay any longer, and turned around and left. In the following days, Jiraiya began to teach his ninjutsu and senjutsu to Minato Namikaze without reservation. However, during the days of teaching, there was always a little red-haired girl following the master and apprentice, and Jiraiya did not care too much. The joining of Kushina brought some alternative excitement to the boring teaching life of the two. Jiraiya taught his apprentices. Needless to say, Muen's life was as peaceful as ever, but there was an extra girl in his life. Since Muen and Kurama Huan confirmed their relationship, as long as Kurama Huan was not out on a mission, Kurama Huan would come to Muen's house every evening, and the two would wash vegetables and cook together, and stay together for a while. In this way, the relationship between the two became stronger in daily contact and understanding. One night a month later, Kurama Huan had been out on a mission for 5 days, and Muen and Kayentang were sitting under a tree, practicing the would-release bloodline limit. That's right, at this time Kayentang finally completed the depiction of the technique, and began the formal practice of the would-release bloodline. At this moment, a bloody white wolf came into Muen's yard. When he saw Muen, he relaxed and fell to the ground. He slowly turned into a human form. Who else could it be but Inosuke Shida? I have too many things to do today. I'm too tired. This is the end of this chapter. Sorry. Chapter 84. Inosuke Shida is attacked. Takashi Aburame, 10 years old, dresses the same as most members of the Aburame clan, with sunglasses and a high collar, introverted and not very talkative. Like all Aburame clan members, his methods come from the various insects he cultivates. Takashi Aburame cultivates a variety of insects with unique functions, which also makes him comprehensive in ability. He has a very good level in reconnaissance, tracking, and strong attack, and is a capable assistant to Inosuke Shida. Shuchi Minamino, 12 years old, has average abilities in all aspects, or it is more appropriate to say that he is moderate. He is a disciple of a small family in Konoha. He is a typical person who is not as good as the best, but better than the worst. He has no obvious characteristics, and no high pursuits. His advantage is that he does not compromise in obeying orders, which makes Inosuke Shida quite satisfied. Hoshino, 11 years old, mature, and stable, with a solid foundation. His disadvantage is the same as most ordinary ninjas, lack of ninjutsu inheritance. He is down to earth and studious. If he can survive in battle after battle, there may be something to look forward to in the future. These 3 are the team members assigned to Inosuke Shida by the village, after he became the captain of the team. As various tasks were carried out over a period of time, the understanding between the four people gradually deepened, and they cooperated with each other more tacitly and completed the tasks more easily. Now, the four members of the team have successfully completed a task again and are on their way back to the village. Hoshino was very excited at this time because after completing this task, with the merits accumulated during this period of time, it would be enough to exchange for a ninjutsu after returning to the village. Teacher Shida, what ninjutsu should I exchange for better? Can you give me some advice? Hoshino looked at Inuzuka Shida and asked. After a period of contact, Hoshino still recognized this young captain. Not only is he strong, but more importantly, he takes good care of several genin during the mission. Teacher, I have practiced the family secrets, and I don't know much about ninjutsu. Inuzuka Shida saw a hint of disappointment on Hoshino's face, smiled and said, but after returning to the village, the teacher will take you to see a friend. He is a genius in this area, and he may be able to give you good advice. Hearing this, Hoshino's eyes lit up instantly. Okay, we've been on the road for a long time. Now is a good time to take a break. Then we'll go back to the village in one go. Inuzuka Shida asked everyone on the road to stop and rest. Shuichi, what's wrong with you? Is there something wrong? Inuzuka Shida found that Minamino Shuichi seemed a little distracted and asked with some doubt. Since this mission, Minamino Shuichi has not been in good shape, often distracted, and does not look like a ninja at all. No, nothing, teacher. Maybe the missions are too intensive during this period, and I'm a little tired. Minamino Shuichi said with some trepidation and hesitation. Hearing this, Inuzuka Shida did not think much about it. The missions during this period were indeed quite heavy. Inuzuka Shida himself felt a little tired, not to mention these newly graduated genin. Shuichi, don't worry, after returning to the village this time, our team will have to rest for a while anyway. Inuzuka Shida said with some emotion, if this continues, even I can't stand it. Aburane Takashi beside him also nodded slightly to show his agreement, but did not speak. And Hoshino was still immersed in the joy of obtaining a new ninjutsu. The four members of the team rested for less than half an hour. Inuzuka Shida, who was on guard, twitched his nose slightly, as if he found something wrong. At this time, Aburane Takashi also stood up. The two looked at each other and quickly made a defensive posture, shouting, enemy attack. As soon as the voice fell, the enemy's attack came like a tide. Under the enemy's surprise attack, although the four people made a certain reaction. However, the enemy seemed to have studied the ability and intelligence of the four people very well, and the attack was very targeted. In a short while, the four people were in danger. The three fire escape ninjas fought against Aburane Takashi. Although Aburane Takashi was very good and consciously controlled insects for fire resistance training on weekdays, insects were afraid of fire by nature. At this time, he could not use more than 30% of his skills against the enemy and was soon knocked to the ground. Hoshino lacked skills, and his solid foundation was only compared to the genin of the same year. At this time, facing the siege, he was seriously injured and unconscious in less than a few breaths. Minamino Hidichi was even worse off and was captured alive by several ninjas in an instant. The only one who still had some ability to fight back was Inuzuka Shida. At this time, Inuzuka Shida had turned into the strongest werewolf state, 3 meters tall, and rushed left and right in the enemy's siege, but the effective damage he could cause was very little. The enemy seemed to know the characteristics of his abilities and did not fight him head on, nor did they pursue a quick victory. They just tried their best to prevent him from rescuing the other 3 people and cooperated with each other to consume him. Inuzuka Shida is no longer the genin who had just graduated that year. Although the situation is critical, he is not too anxious, but has become more and more calm. Seeing that the enemy did not fight him head on, and his teammates fell before he could rescue them, Inuzuka Shida stopped and looked at the group of ninjas who were hiding their heads and showing their tails, and laughed. A group of shady rats, relying on some specious intelligence, want to easily defeat me. Isn't it a bit presumptuous? You are indeed a genius of the Inuzuka clan, and you have practiced the secret techniques of the Inuzuka clan to the extreme. You are indeed very powerful, but what about your teammates? Don't you care about their lives? Inuzuka Shida only heard his voice, but did not see him. The leader did not seem to want to show up at this time. At this time, two ninjas carried Minamino Hidichi to the front and threatened Inuzuka Shida with his life. Teacher Shida, don't worry about me, you go first. As long as you want to go, they will not be able to stop you. Minamino Hidichi struggled and shouted. Then, he was knocked unconscious by the enemy's punch. How about it? Surrender. As long as you surrender and cooperate with us, I guarantee the safety of your 3 teammates. The voice came again. How can I trust you? A bunch of guys who don't even dare to show their faces. Inuzuka Shida said relentlessly. While speaking, Inuzuka Shida suddenly took a step and rushed in front of Minamino Hidichi and slapped the 2 ninjas who restricted his movements with his 2 claws. It is estimated that they will not survive. At the same time, Minamino Hidichi, who was originally unconscious, suddenly opened his eyes, and a kunai appeared in his hand, stabbing towards Inuzuka Shida. However, before he could complete the action, Inuzuka Shida seemed to have expected it, and knocked him to the ground with 1 claw. Sure enough, our information was leaked by you. It's really hard for you to pretend for so long. Inuzuka Shida looked at Minamino Hidichi, who was lying on the ground, twitching constantly, and obviously didn't live long, and said coldly, I'm sorry, old teacher. I was also forced. I just want to live well. Minamino Hidichi vomited blood and kept speaking intermittently before he died. That's all for today. It should be on the shelves this Saturday. I was thinking of saving some manuscripts these days, but now I can't guarantee the normal update. I'm really sorry. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow will be difficult too. I'm too busy during the holidays and have too many things to do. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 85 Remarks on the release. Surprising or not? Whether you are surprised or not, I'm very surprised anyway. Before 2 o'clock this afternoon, I thought it would be put on the shelves on Saturday, but now I'm a little caught off guard. I originally thought that I would not write any thank you notes, but then I thought that it was my first book, and it would not be shameful, even if the results were poor. Everyone wrote, so I wrote too. First of all, I would like to thank the 8th editorial team, especially the editor-in-charge King Hu, for pulling me out of the mountains and seas of books and signing the contract to put it on the shelves. At the beginning of this book, there were no recommendations or collections. I was so anxious. I'm not afraid of being laughed at by everyone. I voted for myself and became the vote king. Later, the recommendations from book friends gradually increased, the anxiety was reduced, and the confidence to keep writing became more and more sufficient. So the most important thing is to thank the book friends for their recommendations and monthly votes. For example, Yuji Kintoki fan almost never stops voting every day, and there are also Jian Wuwugsin, Bailem Fiu, Shuchin Damaguan, Xiaoxi Yang Mansion, Don't Remember to Go Back, and other book friends who have supported tirelessly. I will not write them down here to thank them one by one. Of course, there are also 2 book friends who gave me rewards. Although I'm very happy, I hope I won't spend money in the future. It is indeed not well written, and I'm a little embarrassed. Let's talk about the problems of this book. There are indeed many poisonous points in the front. It may be that the writing is not good enough, and the time entry point is not very suitable, which caused many criticized problems in the front. Some of them I admit, and some I don't. Regarding the timeline, some book friends have different opinions. I admit, some dialogues are written more awkwardly. I also admit, there are not many cool points. I also admit. However, some people say that the name of the protagonist is wrong. I don't admit this. There are also people who say that Katoden must die. I don't admit it. Most importantly, many people say that the protagonist is a saint. I firmly disagree with this. One eye in exchange for the life of a teammate. In my opinion, this is always just kindness. The protagonist is not going to save an enemy. How can he become a saint? I will plan and write the following plots well and strive to satisfy the book friends who have seen this, at least to satisfy the book friends who have subscribed. I feel that some of the settings in the back will still be very interesting. I hope I can write more exciting. Finally, I still hope that you can subscribe to my blog if you have the conditions, which is the best support for me. Don't give me any reward, I really don't deserve it. Chapter 86, The Prince's Merit. Teacher, my name is Minamino Hidichi. I don't have any ambitions or talents. I can't become a Jonin, and I can't and don't want to be a Hokage. I just want the war to end early and everyone to live well. Looking at Minamino Hidichi, whose eyes were gradually losing their spirit, Inuzuka Shida remembered his sincere words when they first met, and his heart was mixed with mixed feelings. In the world of ninjas, no matter what the reason is, those who betray their teammates deserve to die. But understanding the truth is one thing, and the feeling of really killing a teammate is another. After all, after being teammates for such a long time, even if he is a betrayer, there are still some feelings. Although I don't know what Minamino Hidichi has encountered and how he was coerced, but this does not affect Inuzuka Shida's anger at the person behind him. The enemy carried Minamino Hidichi to the front, just to lure Inuzuka Shida to rescue, and then wait for an opportunity to attack. Now that all this has been seen through by Inuzuka Shida, there is only one way left, which is to fight head on. Then, the two sides fought again. During the battle, Inuzuka Shida gradually discovered that, as long as he planned to break through, someone would definitely delay him head on, and then the others would attack him with all their strength to cover the enemy in front of him from getting out of contact with him. The enemy was just taking advantage of his isolation, and relying on their numbers to consume him. This also aroused Inuzuka Shida's stubborn temper, and he once again broke through in one direction, and sure enough, another enemy blocked him head on. This time, facing the attacks of other adults, Inuzuka Shida did not choose to retreat, but adopted a method of exchanging injuries for injuries, resisting the attacks of other enemies, and at the same time eliminating the enemies who blocked him head on. The time on the battlefield seemed to stop for a few seconds in an instant, and none of the enemies expected Inuzuka Shida to use such a violent way of fighting. It's amazing, but how long can you last like this? The voice came from the dark without any fluctuations. Inuzuka Shida held a head in his hand, turned his head, and looked at the enemy, revealing a bloodthirsty smile, and said, "Let's see now, who will die first, or I will fall first." The battle became extremely fierce from then on. Inuzuka Shida completely ignored his own injuries, and adopted the method of it is better to cut off one finger than to injure 10 fingers, to kill the enemy by name. In this way, the enemies fell one by one, and Inuzuka Shida's wounds became more and more serious. In this case, he still maintained an indifferent look. This made the enemy more shocked, and their morale was seriously low. However, Inuzuka Shida knew his own situation. Even with the strong vitality and recovery ability in the werewolf state, it has now reached its limit. After killing an enemy again, and adding 2 more wounds on his body, Inuzuka Shida took advantage of the enemy's increasingly low morale and suddenly retreated to break out. He was about to leave the encirclement and leave, but was pushed directly into the encirclement by a sudden earth dragon. "We can't let you go like this. We have spent so much effort, and suffered such heavy losses. If we'll let you run away, it will be really unprofitable." The voice from the dark came again. At this time, Inuzuka Shida had indeed reached his limit. He seemed to have let out his last breath, after failing to break through. He could not even maintain his werewolf form. He turned into a human form again, and fainted with blood all over his body. Even so, the enemy did not seem to dare to come forward to check immediately. You know, even under siege just now, Inuzuka Shida killed a full 5 of them. After a long time, someone approached to test, and found that Inuzuka Shida was indeed unconscious. He sealed his consciousness with a coma spell, to prevent him from waking up suddenly, and causing another accident. "Okay, clean up the battlefield immediately." The voice from the dark came again. "Take the 2 little ghosts who are not dead back. They are also very good experimental materials, and cannot be wasted." Not far from the battle, 2 middle-aged ninjas stood together. They should be the leaders of this operation. One of them was Yuto Aburame, who was with Shimura Danzo back then. The other was also about 30 years old, with a scar on his left cheek from the corner of his eye to the corner of his mouth. He was the one who had performed the Earth Escape ninjutsu just now. Sure enough, if it wasn't for the sudden attack that made it impossible for their team to form a coordinated team, the result might have been even worse than it is now. Yuto Aburame said. Thanks to you. Otherwise how could you have hidden it from the bugs of the Aburame brats in the nose of Inuzuka Shida? The scarred man said, but you really had the guts to do it. This is a descendant of your clan. Humph. Since I entered the root, I have no relationship with the Aburame family. Yuto Aburame said with a cold face. Inuzuka Shida was indeed confused and fell into a coma, but what was different from ordinary people was that there was more than one consciousness in his body. In the battle just now, the prince was only responsible for providing strength together. The main consciousness in the battle was Inuzuka Shida, and only Inuzuka Shida was unconscious. At this time, after Inuzuka Shida was put under a coma spell, the princess consciousness quietly awakened. Since sharing a body with Inuzuka Shida, the two consciousnesses have been living together day and night, and the princess intelligence has been improving every day, and is gradually approaching humans. The prince remembered Inuzuka Shida's warning to him before his consciousness became blurred, that is, to run to find Muen regardless of everything. Therefore, when the enemies were eager to clean up the battlefield, the prince found an opportunity and occupied the body. I saw that Inuzuka Shida's body suddenly turned into a wolfhound. Before the enemy could react, it rushed out of the encirclement, and its forelegs ran rapidly and disappeared in an instant. Chase. A furious voice came. The remaining enemies all reacted and chased after him. However, speed is one of the prince's specialties, and the enemy can't catch up. At night, the prince rushed into the courtyard where Muen was. The moment he saw Muen, he couldn't hold on any longer, fainted on the ground, and slowly changed into a human form. Brother Muen, what is this? Is this a transformation technique? Kaintang came back to his senses from his training, and said in surprise, when he saw Inuzuka Shida, the wolfhound, transformed into a human. Muen was also shocked at this time. He did not answer Kaintang's question. He took 2 steps at a time, and came to Inuzuka Shida's side. After checking and finding that there was no danger to his life for the time being, he said to Kaintang, come and help, let's go to the hospital. Muen's home is located at the edge of the village. In order to prevent possible enemies, going to Konoha Hospital at this time is the most correct choice. Chapter 87 The secret behind the attack. The 3 of them arrived at the hospital quickly. With the blessing of Muen's title as vice president, Inuzuka Shida's admission procedure was quickly completed. Kaintang, go to the Inuzuka clan's residence and notify Inuzuka Shida's family. Muen said to Kaintang while treating Inuzuka Shida. Okay, brother Muen. Kaintang didn't say much and left immediately. While Muen was treating Inuzuka Shida in the hospital, several ninjas followed the traces of Inuzuka Shida and chased to Muen's courtyard, searching and inspecting for a while. The leaders were Yuto Aburame and the Scarred Earth Escape Ninja. It seems that the last trace is here. I didn't expect the Inuzuka clan to have such ability. No, it should be the ability of Inuzuka Shida alone. Yuto Aburame looked at the insects resting on his hands and said, whose yard is this? Muen lives here. I came here to monitor for a while. One of them answered. What, Moon, one of the Konoha twin stars? It looks like things are going to be troublesome. Upon hearing this, the Scarred Ninja was a little uneasy for the first time, and hurriedly said, let's go and report to Master Danzo immediately. Kurama Huan overcame the bloodline defect of the Kurama clan. Inuzuka Shida became even stronger after losing his companion ninja dog. Each of these 2 events was a major event that changed a family, but the 2 families chose to keep a low profile and only said that they had mastered the family secrets. There are so many families in Konoha, and although they don't know each other well, they can understand each other's secrets. Now suddenly 2 families have family secrets that change the fate of the family, which in itself is enough to attract the attention of those who are interested. Moreover, the young ninjas who have mastered the secrets of the 2 families are in the same team, and they have had in-depth exchanges with the same person for a period of time before mastering the secrets. All of this is too coincidental. Therefore, based on all these suspicious events, the leader of the Root Danzo believes that Moon must have some unknown secrets. This secret will definitely greatly enhance the overall strength of Konoha. Therefore, the purpose of the root at the beginning was actually Moon. However, Moon is not only strong in himself, but the other 3 members of the team are also masters, who cooperate with each other tacitly, and have a high degree of trust. Not only is it hopeless to attack by force, but it is also difficult to break through from the inside. Of course, it is precisely because of the strong individual strength of the team that Danzo will strongly propose to the 3rd generation to split the Moon team. This is an open conspiracy. Once split, as long as you put ninjas that can be used by the root into the new Moon team, collect intelligence, and kill with one blow, you can capture Moon and master his secrets, thereby enhancing the strength of the root and making the ambition to control Konoha go further. Sure enough, the team split went smoothly. However, the subsequent script was out of the control of the root. Moon did not continue to form a new team, but instead served as the vice president of the hospital, and no longer went out to perform tasks. In this way, the possibility of capturing Moon becomes infinitely smaller. After all, even the root dare not mess around in the village. Afterwards, the root led by Danzo had to target the other 3 people in the team, especially Inosuke Shida and Kurama Kian. As long as they succeeded, they could get a glimpse of Moon's secrets, and then they would decide, based on the situation. Today was the time to close the net against Inosuke Shida, but they didn't expect that there would be a mistake in the end. Who would have thought that someone could wake up after being cursed with coma? Danzo, this is what happened. The scarred ninja knelt on one knee and explained to Danzo everything that happened. Does Inosuke Shida know your identities? Danzo's tone was still calm. They probably don't know. Even if they guessed a little bit, they can't have the slightest evidence. Abure Muto knelt on one knee and replied, "That's good. As long as there is no evidence, no one dares to mess around." Danzo continued calmly, "The arrangement on Inosuke Shida's side failed, and the arrangement on Kurama Kian must not have any mistakes. We must gain something anyway." Yes. The 2 of them bowed their heads and responded. At the hospital, Inosuke Shida's mother Inosuke Tsubasa has also arrived at the hospital. Inosuke Shida's father Inosuke Ji and brother Inosuke Kai are both out on missions and are not at home. At this time, Inosuke Tsubasa was walking anxiously in the hospital corridor. Kai Tang looked at the anxious Inosuke Tsubasa and was a little overwhelmed for a while. Fortunately, after a while, Muen had finished the treatment and came out. Seeing this, Inosuke Tsubasa took 2 steps to Muen's side, stared at Muen and said, "Muen, how is Shida? Auntie, don't worry." Muen naturally knew Inosuke Tsubasa and hurriedly replied, "Shida's vitality is very strong, and his recovery speed is different from ordinary people. He will wake up tomorrow morning at most." "That's good." Inosuke Tsubasa breathed a sigh of relief and then said with a ferocious expression, "Do you know who did it? Which village's ninja? If I know who it is, the Inosuke family will never forgive him." It's not clear yet, but judging from the coma spell cast by the enemy on him, the enemy seems to just want to capture him alive. Muen said with a frown. In fact, Muen already had some guesses in his mind, but it was difficult to say too much in the hospital, where there were so many people and eyes. Hearing this, Inosuke Tsubasa also showed a thoughtful expression. "Auntie, you should take a rest first. I will take care of it here. Many problems will be clear when Shida wakes up tomorrow." Muen interrupted Inosuke Tsubasa's thoughts and said, "Okay, this matter should not be simple. I have to report it to the clan." Inosuke Tsubasa replied with a serious expression. Unlike Muen's worries, Inosuke Tsubasa was worried that someone was spying on the secrets of the Inosuke family. Seeing that Inosuke Tsubasa had left, Muen looked at Kaintang and said, "You should go home too. Just pretend you didn't know what happened today. Do you understand?" Seeing Kaintang nodded in agreement, Muen continued to instruct, "My house won't be very safe recently. Don't go to my house to practice with release bloodline before this matter is over. Wait until I notify you before you go to practice. Also, don't relax in the practice of bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique. Okay, brother Muen." Kaintang always obeyed Muen's words. Then, he said goodbye and left. The next morning, Inosuke Shida woke up. The first thing he saw was Muen, who had been on duty all night, which made Inosuke Shida breathe a sigh of relief. "Muen, the enemy may be from Konoha." Inosuke Shida's first sentence dropped a bomb. Chapter 88 Taking the Initiative. After saying this, Inozuka Shida thought Muen would be surprised. But he didn't expect that Muen seemed to have known it for a long time, and his expression was calm without any ripples. Seeing that Muen's face was calm and a little scary, Inozuka Shida shuddered unconsciously and then said, "This group of ninjas who attacked me, except for some common ninjutsu, did not use any special ninjutsu that might expose their identities. Even if they were killed by me, they were not shaken. Their discipline is really terrible. It could only be people from the village. People from other villages will not have such concerns. But I can't think of why this is happening. Do they want to peek at my secret technique?" Inozuka Shida said with some confusion, "But the price is too high, with planting spies and ambushes. The value of my secret technique is not that high. Maybe it's because I implicated you?" Muen interrupted Inozuka Shida's imagination and said, "Not all people in Konoha are stupid. You and Huan are enough to arouse suspicion from some people. I thought that these people would have some concerns, even if they had doubts. I didn't expect." Muen sneered unconsciously when he said this. At this time, Inozuka Shida was already stunned by what he heard, and then he seemed to have thought of something and said, "Oh no, if that's the case, then Huan will also be in danger, right? Hurry up, Muen, go save Huan. You still have some conscience and can still think of Huan. However, passive defense is not my style. In this case, I have to take the initiative to attack." Muen's expression was cold. Inozuka Shida, who was familiar with Muen, knew that Muen would only show such an expression when facing an enemy. Seeing that Muen had made a decision, Inozuka Shida was relieved and said, "Then is there anything I can do? At the critical moment, you Inozuka clan can just support it." Muen said calmly, "This little thing will definitely be no problem. Although my father is not the clan leader, he is also the clan leader's brother." Inozuka Shida assured loudly. "Is there anything else? I also want to help." Inozuka Shida said eagerly, "You should heal your wound first. If there is anything, I will find you." Muen said, and seeing Inozuka Shida's somewhat embarrassed expression, he said, "If you have anything else, tell me." Inozuka Shida laughed foolishly and then said, "If it is possible, can you save my 2 team members if they are not dead?" "Don't worry. I will pay attention," Muen said. After that, Muen left. Because in Muen's perception, Inozuka Tsubasa has come. Next, it is better to give the space to the mother and son. Seeing Inozuka Tsubasa, Inozuka Shida naturally told Inozuka Tsubasa his guess, but did not mention what Muen said. Sure enough, after hearing Inozuka Shida's analysis, Inozuka Tsubasa instantly became furious and said, "Shida, don't worry. I have explained this matter to the clan last night. If it is really the village, then the village must give our Inozuka clan an explanation." Muen knew that the person who was spying on him at this time could only be the root under the leadership of Danzo in the entire Konoha. A long time ago, Muen discovered that someone was monitoring him. He didn't care at the time, but he was not without reaction. Spiritual mist had already entered the bodies of all those who had monitored him. Although Muen was very cautious about the use of spiritual mist in the village, that was only for his companions. Once identified as an enemy by Muen, Muen would use spiritual mist without scruples. There is no doubt that in Muen's view, the person who monitors him is undoubtedly the enemy. An important feature of spiritual mist is that once it enters the enemy's body, as long as Muen does not take it back or dissipate it, it will always lurk in the enemy's body. Therefore, when Muen concentrated, he immediately felt that one of the people who had monitored him was in the village, and Muen followed him from a distance. The person that Shimura Iji admired most, since he was a child, was Shimura Danzo. He believed that Shimura Danzo was the best person in the clan. He first became one of the members of the guard team of the 2nd generation Hokage, and then became the right-hand man of the 3rd generation Hokage, and he had a pivotal position in the entire Konoha. Therefore, when he heard that Shimura Danzo was going to set up the route, Shimura Iji decisively signed up to join. Because he was a member of the Shimura clan and had decent strength, Shimura Iji's entry into the route was relatively smooth, and he soon became one of Danzo's confidants in the route. After entering the route, Shimura Iji never compromised on Danzo's orders. He firmly believed that everything the root did was for the betterment of the village, and some sacrifices were inevitable, even if they raised the butcher knife against their compatriots. However, Shimura still had lingering fears about yesterday's mission. He didn't expect that the man named Inuzuka Shida would be so tenacious. Under absolute disadvantages, he was able to kill so many companions in the route. Shimura once thought that he would also die at the hands of Inuzuka Shida. But fortunately, he survived, although the mission ultimately failed. Early this morning, Shimura went out of the village. He was going to a secret laboratory of the root outside the village. This laboratory was the root's research base on the cells of the first generation Hokage, Hashirama. He was one of the guards of the laboratory. There are some taboo experiments that cannot be done in the village. Shimura fantasized that one day after the experiment was successful, he would also be able to practice wood release. At that time, he would have the opportunity to be like the first generation Hokage and become a hero of Konoha. As for those ninjas who sacrificed for the experiment, including those ninjas of the Senju clan, weren't their sacrifices deserved? For the greatness of Konoha, all sacrifices are worth it. Under the induction of Muen's spiritual mist, Shimura whereabouts and thoughts were all visible. The confidentiality measures of the route were indeed very good. The laboratory was clearly near the village, but Shimura still took a long time to get there. Muen was sure that, if it weren't for the spiritual mist, he would never find this place. The laboratory is located underground, divided into 2 floors. There is nothing special about the first floor below ground. It seems to be just an ordinary place to study ninjutsu. But the second floor below ground is the focus of this laboratory. All kinds of human experiments are carried out here. Muen had a strange feeling in his heart. Tsunaden Katodan had been investigating for several months without any results, but he figured out the intelligence information all at once. Sometimes things are so unpredictable. The release of this book was a bit too sudden, and I've been busy recently. I'll see if I can write more tomorrow. Chapter 89 Breaking into the Laboratory. Muen's original idea was to secretly destroy several root bases and give them a warning. After all, it was a dirty thing within the village. Both sides had no evidence, and no one could blame anyone. But now in this root laboratory, using living people to study the cells of the first generation Hokage Hashirama is definitely a violation of the village's taboo. And the evidence is sufficient and there is no way to refute it. Muen naturally did not miss this opportunity. Muen quickly formed a seal, and the spiritual mist and spiritual mist were performed one after another, and they had already followed the induction, and entered the bodies of the root members in the laboratory. Muen thought it would be very smooth. After all, the spiritual mist had never had any accidents, except when facing the 7-tailed Jinchuriki. However, this time there was indeed an accident. The second floor of the laboratory. After meeting Danzo last night, Abure Muto did not stay in the village for long. After all, he was already dead on the surface. In order to avoid causing unnecessary trouble, he returned to this laboratory as soon as possible. He was one of the persons in charge of this laboratory, who, Yuto Abure noticed something was wrong the first time. It turned out that the bugs Yuto Abure kept in his body discovered the spiritual mist and illusion mist that invaded his body. Sure enough, no ninjutsu in this world is invincible, and the spiritual transformation technique is no exception. Yuto Abure's bugs easily detected it and devoured it. Master Yuto, is there anything wrong? Shimura, who had just returned to the laboratory, saw Yuto Abure's face suddenly change, and asked, "Someone has noticed this place." Yuto Abure looked at the bugs that appeared on his right hand, and said with great certainty, "You can hide it from others, but don't think about hiding it from my bugs." Yuto Abure's words made Shimura pale. He was the only one who had just returned from outside. If someone discovered this laboratory now, it is very likely that they followed him here. The other people in the laboratory were also panicked when they heard it. "Don't be nervous, this guy can't escape." Although Yuto Abure looked down on this junior of Danzo, he also understood that it was important to deal with the sneaking enemy at this time, and immediately arranged and said, "I will go out. To deal with the enemy, you must be on guard. If things are out of control, you must detonate the laboratory and destroy everything." Without waiting for others to answer, Yuto Aburame had already rushed out of the laboratory, and his bugs had locked onto the sneaking enemy. When Yuto Aburame's bugs noticed the spiritual mist, Muen also noticed it. Muen did not run away. The failure of the spiritual mist did not mean that he would fail. At most, it would only make him spend more time. Muen was most grateful at this time that he did not rely on the concealment of the spiritual mist to do whatever he wanted in the village. Otherwise he really didn't know what the consequences would be. "It's you?" Yuto Aburame was shocked when he saw Moon. Then he said calmly, "This is the base of the route. Do you know the consequences of attacking here?" "What consequences can there be? You have already attacked me. Aren't you ready for my revenge?" Moon said calmly. "Or are you used to being arrogant, thinking that it is natural for you to deal with others, and it is treason for others to fight back?" After that, the two of them had already fought together. Moon looked at the insects that were attacking him in an overwhelming manner, and he was not panicked. He formed seals with his hands and spit out a mist filled with white light from his mouth. If you look closely, you will find that the white mist is composed of thin swords. Yuto Aburame's insects could not break through the white mist spit out by Moon, but died in pieces under the thin swords. This surprised Yuto Aburame, and he quickly controlled the insects to fly back, ready to make a long-term plan. However, Moon would never give him this opportunity and immediately bullied him. Two lightsabers condensed in his hands, and he was wrapped in white mist, fighting with Yuto Aburame in close combat. Yuto Aburame was not a combat genius like Minato Namake's. When the insect's attacks could not produce any effect, he could only struggle to support himself under Moon's strong attacks. Although he avoided 2 fatal attacks with his insect clones, he had nowhere to escape under Moon's powerful sensing ability, and eventually died under Moon's sword light. When Yuto Aburame was at a disadvantage, and was about to die, on the 2nd floor underground of the laboratory, a group of insects flew in, and formed the word explosion on the ground, which meant that it was impossible to do anything, and they had to detonate the laboratory to eliminate all traces. Just as the laboratory staff took out the detonating talisman and prepared to act according to orders, they fell to the ground one by one. It was Moon who was outside who sensed the situation in the laboratory and pulled these people into the illusion with a spiritual mist. Most of these people were research type ninjas, and their combat capabilities were not strong. In addition, with Moon's continuous improvement in illusion ability, it was reasonable for them to fall into the illusion. After confirming that Yuto Aburame was completely dead, Muen walked slowly into the basement. The 1st floor was an ordinary laboratory. Apart from a large amount of research materials, there was nothing special about it. At this time, a ninja was shaking all over, as if he was trying to break free from the illusion. A sword light condensed by Muen pierced his throat, and it seemed that he was going to die. When Muen went down to the 2nd floor, Shimuraigi actually broke free from the illusion. He looked at Muen and roared, "Why did you come to interrupt the plan of Danzo-sama? You deserve to die." Muen looked at him with disdain, and pierced his heart with a sword light, ending his life. The scene on the 2nd floor surprised Muen. It was more like a prison than a laboratory. In each prison were people who had been transplanted with Hashirama cells. The front ones were okay. They should be people who had not been implanted with Hashirama cells for a long time, and there was no change. Correspondingly, there were more people in each prison. The deeper you go, the fewer people are imprisoned, and the innermost ones are even single cells. They should be the ones who have been transplanted for a longer time. Their bodies have been corroded by Hashirama cells, and are no longer human. Some have been ulcerated. Some parts of the body have exploded directly. Even worse, various organs have grown out of the transplanted parts, becoming deformed. What a miserable scene. Muen quickly turned around, and whenever he found a ninja who showed signs of waking up from the illusion, he would reward him with a sword light. Then, Muen came to the outermost prisons, looked at the pairs of eager eyes inside, and said to the people inside with a smile, "I'm Muen. Are there any Konoha ninjas? I need your help." Chapter 90. Going straight to Huanglang. Teacher Muen. Is it really Teacher Muen? In the outermost prison, a boy pointed to a boy wearing a turtleneck and sunglasses, and said in surprise, "My name is Ashino. His name is Aburame Takashi, and we are both students of Teacher Shida." Muen's eyes lit up when he heard this. Looking in the direction of the voice, there were two teenage boys with bandages wrapped around their bodies, and they looked in good spirits. Inosuke Shida had instructed them to save his two students, but it was done without any effort. After that, several more Konoha ninjas stood up. Of course, there was also a ninja from another village who tried to fish in troubled waters, but was successfully identified by Muen. In special times, Muen would not hesitate to use the spiritual mist. Under this ninjutsu, liars have nowhere to hide. With the help of several Konoha ninjas, the remaining root ninjas were quickly detained. Afterwards, Muen strengthened the illusion and said to several Konoha ninjas, "Be on guard. I'll go back to the village and be back soon." "Yes, Lord Muen." Several people looked at each other and said hurriedly. Muen needed to invite Tsunade and Katodan and his wife over. They were Muen's natural allies now. Only by letting them see the tragic situation here with their own eyes could they unite against the enemy. This place was not far from the village, and with the consumption of chakra, Muen had rushed to the hospital and met Tsunade in less than half an hour. "Muen, what did you do all morning? You didn't come to the hospital or ask for leave," Tsunade said jokingly after seeing Muen. Muen quickly told Tsunade about the discovery of Inosuke Shida's injury last night, the speculation that someone in the village wanted to deal with him, and then his discovery of the laboratory. Then he described the scene he saw in the laboratory in detail. After listening to what Muen said, Tsunade's face was cold, and she couldn't hide her murderous eyes. "Let's go and take a look." Tsunade was a little furious and pulled Muen out of the hospital. "Don't we need to call Master Dan? Let's go to the school to pick him up," Tsunade said decisively. Half an hour later, Tsunade and Katodan, led by Muen, came to the laboratory of Root. "Mamoru, Shinichi, why are you two here? Didn't you two die in the mission a few days ago?" As soon as she entered the laboratory, Tsunade found two familiar faces. These two were two of the disbanded Senju tribe. Mamoru was a little older, about 23 or 24 years old, and Shinichi was a little younger, about 13 or 14 years old. The two are not in a very good condition now. Unlike Hoshino and Aburame Takashi, the two had transplanted Hashirama cells a day before yesterday, but the time was too short and the side effects have not yet appeared. Without waiting for the two to answer, Tsunade already knew what was going on. Afterwards, Tsunade went deeper into the second floor of the basement again. It didn't matter. In the deeper prison, Tsunade found more Senju people, or in other words, most of the people in the deeper prison were Senju people. It was difficult for non-Senju people to survive to this stage. This made Tsunade feel both guilty and angry. After coming out, Tsunade was trembling all over. At this time, she just wanted to wipe out the root immediately. "Calm down, Tsunade," Katodan said at this time. "We need to protect the laboratory first. The evidence cannot be lost. I will go back and gather the members of the Kato clan." At this time, a group of insects flew over. Katodan and Tsunade's faces changed. When they were about to meet the enemy, Aburame Takashi said, "Tsunade-sama, Dan-sama, these are the reinforcement I called." It turned out that after Aburame Takashi was captured, the insects in his body had been suppressed by Aburame Yuto with a secret method. When Yuto Aburame died, he immediately released his insects to seek help from his tribe members. Seeing the insects slowly gathering and transforming into 3 members of the Aburame tribe, Takashi Aburame hurriedly greeted them. "Father, uncle, and brother. Takashi, who imprisoned you here?" Takashi Aburame's father said. "Father, it was Yuto Aburame. It was that traitor, isn't he dead?" Takashi Aburame's uncle said angrily. "How dare he fake his death and escape? Where is he?" After hearing that Yuto Aburame had died at the hands of Muen, Takashi Aburame's uncle looked at Muen deeply and said, as expected of one of the 2 stars of Konoha, "He really lives up to his name." Before he finished speaking, Inosuke Tsubasa and 3 members of the Inosuke tribe and their ninja dogs chased here. "Muen, when I saw you rush to the hospital and leave with Dean Tsunade in a hurry, I knew something big must have happened." Inosuke Tsubasa rode on the ninja dog and said, "It has something to do with our Inosuke Shida. Our Inosuke clan must have a hand in this matter." The sudden change caught Muen and others off guard. "In that case, Inosuke Tsubasa, Aburame Yishi, the laboratory is left to you." Katodan decisively took over the baton and made action arrangements. Tsunade and I will go to find Danzo now. The root must give an explanation. Katodan knew that the Aburame clan and the Inuzuka clan had arrived one after another, and it was a high probability event that the root would notice it. At this time, it was necessary to fight fast and not give the root too much reaction time. After speaking, Katodan and Tsunade had already rushed towards the village at a high speed. Muen was a little confused and shouted loudly, "Master, what about me? How could you forget? I don't have a mission yet." As he said, Muen chased Katodan and Tsunade. "You see, we haven't fought against the enemy together for a long time." Inuzuka Tsubasa looked at Aburame Mizuki, who was Aburame Takashi's uncle, and said, "Yeah, I didn't expect that when we joined forces again, the opponent would be someone from the same village. It's really unpredictable." Aburame Mizuki said with some emotion. Katodan's prediction was not wrong. At this time, the root had already suspected the exposure of the underground laboratory outside the village. When Katodan and Tsunade and his wife arrived, Danzo was making emergency arrangements with several high-level members of the root. However, the furious Tsunade obviously would not give them the opportunity to make arrangements calmly. The headquarters of the root is located in an underground space in Konoha. Tsunade's attack was also simple and rough. When Tsunade jumped from the air, the strange power had already gathered in her hands, and she punched the ground. With a boom, the ground cracked into a spider web and suddenly collapsed rapidly downwards. The root was completely buried in the ruins. For a time, the root also suffered heavy casualties. Chapter 91 Fighting. Tsunade, what do you want to do? Are you crazy? Danzo rushed out of the ruins and roared at Tsunade angrily. What do I want to do? Tsunade laughed angrily and rushed towards Danzo, saying, "Don't you know what you did?" At this time, Danzo was only in his 40s, in his prime, with his speed, strength, and agility at the peak. Coupled with his superb wind escape ninjutsu, his strength should not be underestimated. Although Tsunade is very strong and has an absolute advantage in strength, her strange strength has sacrificed a certain degree of agility. Facing an opponent of Danzo's level, no matter how strong her strength is, it is useless if she can't hit anyone. In addition, Tsunade is a medical ninja after all, and she is more of a cooperation on the battlefield. At this time, from the fight between the two, it can be seen that Danzo is stronger than Tsunade in absolute strength. However, Tsunade is one of the three ninjas after all, and it is unlikely that Danzo will win quickly. Katodan, who was standing aside, was also embarrassed. His ninjutsu was known for assassination, and he was emphasizing hiding in the dark and killing with one strike. At this time, he was being besieged by the other four root ninjas who escaped from the ruins, and he couldn't spare his hands for a while. This was the scene that Muen saw when he arrived. The battle between the two sides had fallen into a stalemate. Muen did not rush out to help Tsunade and Katodan. He had some understanding of the strength of the couple, and now was definitely not the best time for him to rush out. He hid aside and was trying to find an opportunity to kill with one strike. When Tsunade's shocking punch fell from the sky, most of Konoha heard the loud noise. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was in the Hokage's office, was of course no exception. The third Hokage reacted very quickly. He didn't have time to consider the reasons, and immediately called the Anbu team, who were always guarding on the side, to rush to the battle site. The one who was faster than the third Hokage was Jiraiya, one of the three ninjas. When the battle took place, he was training with Minato Namikaze nearby, and of course, Uzumaki Kushina was also indispensable. When a loud noise was heard, Jiraiya knew that it must be Tsunade, who was furious, and said to Minato and Kushina with a serious expression, "Stay here and don't run around. I'll go see what's going on." After that, without waiting for the two to respond, he hurriedly left. Under the siege of four root ninjas, Katodan gradually showed some signs of being unable to hold on, and slowly approached Tsunade. When the two crossed, the spiritual light on Katodan's body flashed, and the four ninjas appeared in a moment of stalemate. Tsunade seized the opportunity and used two punches with strange force to blow two of them away, and Katodan instantly blocked Danzo's attack. This is Katodan's deep development and application of the spiritualization technique under the influence of Muen. Although it will not directly kill the enemy, it can bring a momentary attack opportunity. Katodan and Tsunade, who had reaped the fruits of the battle, looked at each other and instantly broke off contact, facing Danzo and the two root members from a distance. When Jiraiya arrived, he saw this scene. Seeing his two capable subordinates die in front of him, even the selfish and cold-blooded Danzo couldn't help but be furious at this time, and couldn't help but use the summoning technique, and the dream-eating beast Dream Taper appeared on the battlefield. Seeing this, Tsunade was not to be outdone, and summoned the summoning beast slug to the battlefield. Danzo-sama, Tsunade, how about stopping? Jiraiya saw that the battle was escalating, and hurriedly persuaded, we are still in the village now, do you want to tear down the village? Jiraiya Jr., the root ninja, can't die in vain. Danzo replied angrily, while making a seal, to prepare for the attack. You know what you did, and no root ninja is innocent. Tsunade also said forcefully. At the same time, Katodan's spiritualization technique was also ready. The two sides fought again despite Jiraiya's dissuasion. Katodan's spiritual light flashed, and his spiritual body instantly pounced on Danzo, but it was bounced out, as if it had pounced on a barrier. Katodan had to change his target, and pounced on the other two root members. When Katodan's body was filled with spiritual light, Danzo's chest bulged, he took a deep breath, opened his mouth and spit out a large number of air bullets from his mouth, shooting at Katodan. He knew the danger of the spiritualization technique, and knew that the best way at this time was to kill Katodan's body. However, Tsunade would not let him do as he wished. With the help of the summoning beast slug, she easily took Katodan to avoid Danzo's attack. At this time, the Scarface ninja attacked Danzo, and Danzo had a cold expression, and was well prepared. While retreating, he spit out air bullets from his mouth, and killed the Scarface ninja. In this way, the root ninja who presided over the ambush of Inazukashida died in the hands of Danzo. Just as the spirit Katodan was about to find a new object to possess, a small barrier suddenly rose around the body of the scarred ninja, confining Katodan in such a small space. It was arranged by another root ninja. Although the spirit Katodan in the barrier was safe, he had lost his offensive ability. More importantly, his body could only become a burden to Tsunade at this time. On this side, Tsunade and the slug finally escaped the attack of the dream-eating beast, the Dream Taper, and saw Katodan trapped in the barrier. At this time, Jiraiya outside the battlefield was the busiest. He split 4 shadow clones, evacuating the villagers, while resisting the leak ninjutsu attacks. Just when Katodan was trapped in the barrier, the battle between Tsunade and Danzo was about to break out. A huge Ruai Jingu bang fell from the sky. The third generation Sarutobi Hiruzen stood on the golden hoop, and said in a cold voice, Tsunade, Danzo, this is over. Tsunade and Danzo heard this, although they were unwilling, but they also relaxed their minds and stopped. Just when everyone thought that the battle was over, Muen, who was hiding in the dark, took action. A dragon emitting a dazzling white light fell from the sky and went towards Danzo. At this moment, Danzo's mind was lost, and he had no time to defend. But the third generation Sarutobi Hiruzen was instantly furious and roared, how dare you! The third generation held the Ruai Jingu bang, and rushed towards the white dragon. The thousands of sword lights transformed by the dragon were easily blocked by the Ruai Jingu bang in the hands of the third generation. You know, Muen once used this ninjutsu to instantly make the seven-tailed Jinchuriki lose his fighting power. At this moment, everyone present truly saw what the style of a ninja hero is. However, when the third Hokage blocked the sword escape, sword dragon break, he turned around and found that Danzo had fallen in a pool of blood. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 92 Nine-Tailed Fox. Muen had never thought about what the sword dragon that fell from the sky could do to Danzo. The platinum dragon that fell from the sky was just a means to attract attention. If it succeeds, it's good. If it doesn't, Muen is also prepared to back it up. After all, it's not only powerful ninjutsu that can kill people. Close combat is more direct and efficient. When everyone was attracted by the grand ninjutsu, Muen came to Danzo in an instant. The strong arrival of the third generation made Danzo's spirit relax a little. At this time, he was attracted by the ninjutsu in the sky. Under Muen's intentional calculation, even if Danzo had barely reacted, he could not block the sharpness of the sword escape blessed by the yin escape for a while. After all, not everyone can have a magic weapon like the Ruai Jingubang. Muen held the sword escape lightsabers in both hands, and instantly left countless wounds on Danzo. When Danzo completely lost the ability to resist, and Muen was ready to kill, an Anbu ninja who followed the third generation was the first to react, and instantly came to Danzo's side, helping Danzo block the fatal attack. Muen saw that things were impossible, so he had to retreat for the time being. However, when retreating, Muen casually killed the root ninja who had been maintaining the barrier to trap Katodan. As the barrier disappeared, the spirit Katodan instantly returned to his original body. In this way, the arrogant root high level only had Danzo left. And although Danzo barely saved his life, the injuries all over his body could not be easily cured by ordinary medical ninjutsu. There happened to be a medical ninja in the Anbu team who was trying to connect Danzo's broken limbs and treat his injuries. But he found that the wound was extremely difficult to heal because the woolen murderous intent manifested by Yindun lingered in the wound, constantly destroying life. The third generation Sarutobi Hiruzen watched his former comrade fall in a pool of blood, with 3 of his limbs broken. He was instantly furious, and with fierce eyes, he looked at Muen and said, "I've said that this is the end, why don't you stop? I never hold back on my enemies." Muen looked directly into the eyes of the third generation and said calmly, "I learned this on the battlefield. Holding back on the enemy means killing myself and my companions. I'm responsible for the lives of myself and my companions." Hearing Muen say this calmly, the third generation laughed angrily. "Do you regard Danzo as an enemy?" After saying this, the veins on the third generation's hands bulged, and he pointed the Ruai Jingubang at Muen, as if he would suddenly kill someone in the next moment. Facing the third generation, Muen felt an astonishing momentum coming at him, like a lone boat in the sea facing strong winds and huge waves, as if the boat would be destroyed and everyone on board would die in the next moment. At this moment, Muen deeply felt the power of the third generation in his heyday. At the same time, Muen also understood that under the pressure of the powerful momentum of the third generation, he either bowed his head and admitted his mistakes, or rose up to resist. Obviously, Muen didn't think he was wrong, so the only way to go was resistance. Once that happened, the third generation would not hesitate to take Muen down in the name of insubordination, so that his dignity would be preserved, and he could also take the initiative to buffer this incident and buy time for subsequent processing. Just when Muen had to fight back under the pressure of the powerful momentum, Katodan decisively walked in front of Muen, blocked between the two, and said loudly, "Lord Third Generation, I don't think Muen is wrong." Seeing Katodan blocking Muen, the plan in his heart was shattered. The third generation's momentum did not decrease but increased, and his voice was cold. "You also regard Danzo as an enemy, but even if Danzo was wrong first, you shouldn't punish him. How is your behavior different from betraying the village?" The third generation spoke sharply, and immediately put the hat of betrayer on Muen and Katodan, occupying the moral high ground first. "Teacher, it was Danzo who betrayed the village first. If we eliminate the pests in the village, then you should consider us as betraying the village." At this time, Tsunade also stepped forward and said, "Shut up, Tsunade. Do you know what you are saying?" Utatane Koharu scolded angrily. "Remember your identity." Utatane Koharu and Mito Kadoen also came to the scene at this time. After seeing the miserable state of their former comrade in arms Danzo Shimura, they immediately stood with the third generation. Tsunade didn't say much, but just looked at the third generation with a stubborn face, and didn't mean to bow her head and admit her mistake. Looking at the 3 people with firm eyes, who refused to admit defeat, and didn't give in, the third generation was also quite troubled at this time. The 3 people in front of him at this time, one is the granddaughter of the first generation of Hokage and a genius medical ninja, one is an elite ninja who won the Hokage half sleeves with his outstanding military exploits during World War II, and one is one of the Konoha twin stars who made a great name for himself in the younger generation. They are all the elites of Konoha. It's okay to suppress 1, but it takes a big fight to suppress 3. At this time, the various Anbu teams belonging to the Hokage's direct troops in various parts of the village have also gathered here one after another, surrounding Muen, Tsunade, and Kato Dan. Just as the third Hokage was ready to make up his mind to suppress the 3 people first, and then slowly appease them, a powerful momentum descended, accompanied by a terrifying chakra fluctuation. It was a red-haired old woman who came here with the help of Jiraiya. The golden chakra gushing out of her body formed a fox shape in the air, and the amazing momentum exuded suppressed the momentum of both sides of the confrontation. It was Uzumaki Mito, the wife of the first Hokage Senju Hashirama, who came here. It turned out that after seeing that both sides of the confrontation were unwilling to give in, Jiraiya on the side understood that at this time, a person with a prominent and noble status must be able to reconcile the 2 sides, and he himself would definitely not be able to do it. In the end, after thinking about it, only the first generation lady was qualified. So, Jiraiya decisively invited her over. Mito-sama, how did you bother to come here in person? Sarutobi Hiruzen was also surprised when he saw the person coming. He restrained his sharpness, walked forward quickly, and bowed. At the same time, he did not forget to glare at Jiraiya. Mito-sama, grandmother. At this time, everyone present who had reacted also restrained their own momentum and hurriedly saluted Uzumaki Mito. 3rd generation, I have to come too. Seeing this, Uzumaki Mito slowly restrained the gushing chakra, forming a golden chakra coat, and draped it on his body. He sighed and continued, if I don't come, I'm afraid the Senju people will have no hope of survival. 3rd generation, is it true that the village can't accommodate the Senju people who have disbanded the tribe? Chapter 93 Night Party. Although Uzumaki Mito's tone was light, it sounded like thunder to the ears of the 3rd Hokage. The contribution of the Senju clan to Konoha is self-evident. If there is any problem when he is the Hokage, the public will be upset, and he will be blamed. The 3rd Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen was shocked and said hurriedly, why do you say that, Lord Mito? Since the disbandment of the Senju clan, no one in the village has targeted the Senju clan. Hearing this, Uzumaki Mito just shook his head and said nothing more. Tsunade on the side was not polite and directly exposed the crime of Danzo's research on would release bloodline, using the excuse of mission death as a cover, arresting people in the village, including a large number of Senju clan members, and conducting live experiments. The laboratory outside the village is a clear proof. What else can such a person be but a traitor? Tsunade sneered with 3 parts of anger and 3 parts of disdain. Tsunade's words made the 3rd Hokage and others silent. Although they didn't believe that Danzo would do such a cruel thing, they all understood that Tsunade would not be impulsive and violent if there was no sufficient evidence. Utatane Koharu and Mito Kadan looked at each other, and now they understood why Tsunade was so angry. The Senju clan had already given up power and disbanded the clan, but now they had to suffer such a disaster. In less than half an hour, everyone followed Tsunade in silence to the underground laboratory of the route not far outside the village. At this time, there were potholes everywhere outside the laboratory, and the bodies of ninjas were lying everywhere, obviously after a big battle. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that these should be the ninjas from the route who came to destroy the bodies, but at this time they were dealt with by others. Seeing this scene, the 3rd generation and others were more certain of the truth of Tsunade's words. Before everyone approached, the 2 clans led by Inuzuka Tsubasa and Abure Miyoshi rushed up. The 2 clans were the elite of the clan. Although everyone was injured at this time, it can be seen that the morale was very high. 3rd generation. Seeing that the 3rd generation of Hokage was the leader, Inuzuka Tsubasa and Abure Miyoshi looked at each other, quickly restrained their momentum, and bowed to salute. The 3rd generation was not in a very good mood at this time. He ignored the greetings of the 2, and walked straight to the underground laboratory. Although he had already guessed it, when he saw the miserable situation on the 2nd underground floor, the 3rd generation still had a livid face. When the 3rd generation succeeded to the Hokage, it was too sudden, and his prestige and power were slightly insufficient. In order to consolidate his own position and maintain the stability of Konoha, he had to make some compromises with some families in the village. In order to win over the Shimura clan, he agreed to Danzo to form the root in the name of Anbu Training Department. Unexpectedly, there will be such a serious backlash now. After entering the laboratory again, Muen immediately lifted the illusion cast on the root ninjas. After these root ninjas whose freedom had been restricted woke up in a daze, the first person they saw was the angry third generation. The arrogance they had just revealed immediately disappeared, and they began to tremble. Notify the medical department to examine and treat the experimental personnel and do everything possible to save everyone who can be saved. Notify the interrogation department and the administrative department to review all root personnel. I want to know all the information about the root over the years. The third generation Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen ordered in a solemn and cold voice. Yes. Tsunade, who was the director of the medical department and the director of the hospital, also bowed her head and responded. Utatane Koharu and Mitaman from the administrative department also responded seriously. The interrogation department needed to be notified by the Enbu. At this point, in the face of ironclad evidence, the third generation no longer had the confidence to deal with Muen and others. What the third generation Hokage needed to consider more was how to deal with the root and appease the disbanded Senju tribe and other victims in the village. Of course, for Muen, the most important thing now is to cooperate with Tsunade and provide medical treatment for the victims. Those who have transplanted Ashirama cells for a short time are fine. The transplanted tissue can be removed surgically, but those who are already deformed are no longer worth treating in Muen's opinion. In the busyness of everyone, the night came soon. This night is destined to be a sleepless night for many Konoha ninjas. Late at night, Shimura Danzo had woken up. At this time, his legs and right hand that were cut off by Muen had been barely connected together. From the face, there was no difference from ordinary people, except that his whole body was wrapped in bandages. However, Danzo knew very well that it was no longer the same. Although the severed legs and right hand were barely connected together, Muen's swordsmanship was too weird. Cutting off life caused a large number of nerve necrosis, and the flexibility would be greatly reduced after recovery. In this way, his strength was at least 95% of the 100%. This is unacceptable for ninjas above strength. Why would you do such a crazy thing? The third generation came in, looked at Danzo, and said with great sorrow, "What do you mean, the research on would release?" Danzo, who was lying on the hospital bed, said disdainfully, "I remember that I once reported it to you. Yes, I did agree to your research on would release, but I didn't ask you to do human experiments, and even arrested ninjas in the village. How could you do this? How dare you do this?" The third generation glared at Danzo and questioned. "Really? I don't know either. It should be that my subordinates were eager to make a contribution and did it without telling me." Danzo responded sarcastically. Danzo's meaning was very clear. Since you, the third generation, wanted to get away with it by saying you didn't know, then he, Danzo, would follow suit and also say he didn't know. This was also a deal between Danzo and the third generation. Danzo could conceal the things he had reported to the third generation, and the third generation must also admit that Danzo didn't know about the research method of wood release. What about the seal of the tongue? The root was established to supply talents to the Anbu. You put the curse seal on them all. Do you want to turn the root into your own private army? The third Hokage continued to question. It turned out that when the interrogation department was interrogating the members of the root, they found that all the members of the root were engraved with the seal of the tongue, and no information about the root and Danzo could be interrogated. The entire root seemed to have completely become Danzo's private army. This made the third Hokage very angry, and he thought it was a betrayal of Danzo. Danzo had nothing to say about this. Danzo was not convinced that Sarutobi Hiruzen would succeed him as Hokage, but he had to obey because of the second Hokage's will. However, he also had his own ambitions. He wanted to prove that he was better than Sarutobi Hiruzen, and the root was the power to support his ambitions. I will write another 2000 words. I don't know when I can finish it. I write very slowly. Chapter 94 Final Result. That night, the third Hokage stayed in Danzo's ward for a long time. No one knew what they talked about. Only rumors said that the two had a fierce quarrel. The surroundings were strictly controlled by the Enbu ninjas, and no information was leaked. In order to avoid causing unrest in the village, the main information about the root incident was not made public to the whole village. It was only reported to the elite Jonin and above. After all, in dealing with this issue, the elite Jonin must be involved. 5 days later, the village had dealt with this matter quickly and decisively. At Katodan's house, Muen sat opposite Katodan and Tsunade. In my opinion, there is no need for the root to exist. What's the point of such a dirty department? Tsunade said angrily. Okay, Tsunade, calm down first. Katodan kept comforting her, and then looked at Muen and said, Muen, what do you think? The existence of the root has its reasons, and it is good for Konoha overall. Muen did not hide his shortcomings, and pointed to a big tree outside the window and said, if Konoha is compared to that big tree, then the root and the ninja school are like the roots underground of the big tree, which will continuously provide nutrients to the big tree. The reason why the root has problems is that the leader of the root, Danzo Shimura, led the entire root away from the big tree. Not only did they not provide nutrients for the big tree, but they absorbed nutrients from the big tree and were always ready to break out of the ground so that they could grow into new trees. This goes against the original intention of establishing the root. Muen continued, in general, the problems that emerged in the root are essentially due to Danzo's uncontrollable ambition. However, I don't quite understand why Danzo was not kicked out of the root and why he was still allowed to serve as the deputy director. Muen said in confusion. Danzo used the excuse that the experiments of the root were all done privately by his subordinates, and he was not unaware of it. Tsunade's anger showed signs of being unable to be suppressed, and she said excitedly, and all his subordinates have died in our hands. The key is that there is no evidence to prove that he lied. The most important thing is that the Shimura family is also one of the big families in Konoha. Danzo is not only the director of the root, but also the patriarch of the Shimura family. It is difficult to convict him without absolute evidence. Katodan said on the side. This time, the third generation was able to pull him down from the position of director, which is already very good. Muen also knew what was going on from the two people. Due to the seal of the tongue, no one could prove that the wood release research activities were ordered by Danzo. And Danzo pushed all the faults onto several other senior officials of the root. Anyway, these people are already dead, so there is no evidence. Then who will be the new head of the root? Konoha asked curiously. The old man naturally chose the person he trusted the most, and the new head is Orochimaru. Tsunade replied. Muen felt a chill in his heart when he heard this. This person will be even more capable than Danzo in the future, and the situation in Konoha will undoubtedly become more complicated. Of course, these cannot be said now. Although Orochimaru has started some research, there is no sign of madness. Muen can only be more vigilant secretly. The root ninjas will also be reselected, and the original root ninjas will be sent out to perform tasks. Katodan continued, the root of tongue will also be strictly restricted. Every subsequent application will need to be reported to the administrative department and approved by the Hokage. These are probably the final results of the matter. Muen and Tsunade are not very satisfied with this, but there is nothing they can do. After all, neither of them is Hokage, so they can only accept it with a pinch of their noses. However, Muen was quite thankful that he acted decisively at that time and crippled Danzo. Otherwise, judging from the handling of this time, the exposure of the laboratory might not have had any substantial impact on Danzo. Now at least he has received some punishment. As a medical ninja, Muen can be sure that Danzo's body will never recover unscathed. It would be a great victory for him to be able to stand up. By the way, Muen, if there are major incidents like this in the future, you can also personally participate in the handling. Katodan looked at Muen and said with a smile. Muen was a little puzzled and asked, what's wrong? The Inuzuka, Kurama, and Aburame clans strongly recommended you to become the elite Jonin of Konoha at the meeting. Tsunade said on the side, of course, there are also the two of us. Even Jiraiya is full of praise for you. Will the third Hokage agree to it? Muen said with some confusion. I just rejected a big favor from him. That's why you don't understand the third Hokage. Although the third Hokage is more hesitant than the first and second Hokage, that is due to his lack of strength and prestige. For the stability of the village, he has to do so. but in terms of tolerance, the third Hokage still has the demeanor of an adult. Katoden said with emotion, in short, your appointment as an elite Jonin will be announced soon. Muen thought about what Katoden said and agreed with it. In the original comics, the third generation was ordered to serve in times of crisis. At that time, there were constant external wars and internal instability. He still managed to lead Konoha through the Second and Third World Wars. Although there were still many things that deserved criticism during this period, his achievements could not be erased. Overall, he was considered a qualified politician. Knowing what I wanted to know, just as Muen was about to say goodbye, Katoden pulled Muen and said, Muen, I'm going to practice the spiritual mist you created. Is that okay? Of course, isn't this ninjutsu in your hands? Muen was still very happy about Katoden's respect for him. That's good. Katoden said happily. This battle with Danzo and others also made Katoden realize some of his shortcomings in direct combat, and he also wanted to make some improvements. The spiritual mist is undoubtedly a good choice. Of course, the reason why Katoden wanted to practice the spiritual mist is far more than that. Tsunade, when are we leaving? When Muen said goodbye and left, Katoden pulled Tsunade and said, when grandmother. Tsunade shook her head and said dejectedly, after this attack, grandmother's body can no longer hold on. Chapter 95 Jiraiya's Path. On the way home, Muen's face no longer had the ease he had at Katoden's house. Muen still understood the principle of if you don't kill the snake, you will leave it to harm yourself. Although Danzo's combat power has been greatly reduced now, and it seems that the harm has been reduced a lot, this is the world of ninjas, and any strange things are possible. It seems that, if there is a chance, I still have to kill Danzo. It's better for the enemy to die, Muen thought. However, finding an opportunity to kill Danzo is just a small matter. Keeping progress and becoming stronger is the most important thing. Only strength is the most fundamental guarantee for living well in the ninja world. Unknowingly, Muen has arrived at the door of his house. Muen. When Muen was about to open the door, a cheerful voice came from not far away. Muen looked up in surprise. It was Kurama Huan. His dusty appearance could not hide his gorgeous face. Since he confirmed his relationship with Muen, Kurama Huan has never painted his face with oil paint. Because Muen told her that her face was beautiful, and she was more beautiful when she smiled, and she couldn't let the oil paint cover the blooming of her smile. Kurama Huan ran over and threw herself into Muen's arms. For a moment, Muen felt that he was in the arms of a warm and soft girl, and his mood was more relaxed than ever before. Seeing that the beauty was safe, Muen felt that the few cuts he made at Danzo were really worth it. Friends, relatives, and lovers are the strong driving force that inspires Muen to strive for progress in the ninja world. After the two of them were warm and affectionate for a long time, Kurama Huan blushed, looked at Muen tenderly, and said, Muen, I met Kushina on the way here just now. She asked us to get together tomorrow. Sure. Muen looked at Kurama Huan, and brushed her long hair behind her ears, and said, I just want to see Minato too. Kurama Huan achieved her goal when she saw Muen, but she didn't stay in Muen's house for long, and she jumped away happily. After all, she had just completed the mission, and had to go home to see her. Not long after Kurama Huan left, Kai and Tang also came to Muen's courtyard. After the root incident was determined, Muen had already informed him that he could come to practice wood release. Not to mention that Muen was practicing and researching step by step. Somewhere in Konoha, Danzo was sitting in a wheelchair with bandages all over his body. His eyes were gloomy, and he gritted his teeth, and muttered to himself, Hiruzen, one day you will regret it. And Junior Muen, when I master the secret in your hands, it will be your death. Danzo-sama, Orochimaru-sama is here. At this time, a report came from outside the door. Without waiting for Danzo to react, the young Orochimaru pushed the door open with pride and said, Danzo, the root will belong to me from now on. You must cooperate well. Of course, Minister Orochimaru. The gloom on Danzo's face disappeared instantly. He pretended to be pleased, looked at Orochimaru, and said seriously, I will fully cooperate with you to do a good job in the root. Hearing this, Orochimaru also showed a strange look on his face. He looked at Danzo and said, I hope what you say, and what you do, can be the same. The old man asked me to keep a close eye on you. Don't give me a chance to deal with you. Don't worry, Minister Orochimaru, I will offer my loyalty to the future 4th generation. Danzo's face was serious, as if he was telling the truth. At this time, Orochimaru was indeed coveting the position of the 4th generation. Although he knew Danzo's thoughts, he felt much more comfortable unconsciously, and he also liked Danzo a lot more. The next day, Muen and Kurama Huan came to the place where they had agreed to meet Kushina and Minato. Surprisingly, Muen also saw Jiraiya here. Master Jiraiya, thank you for your support. Muen learned from Katodan and his wife that Jiraiya supported him at the meeting. When they met, he thanked him repeatedly. Haha, what's there to thank me for? It just so happens that I can't stand Danzo's gloomy face. Jiraiya laughed and said, I also wanted to beat him up, but unfortunately I never had the chance. You kid has realized my dream. Muen also laughed when he heard this, and his relationship with Jiraiya became closer. In fact, Jiraiya's kindness to Muen came more from Minato. In the process of teaching Minato ninjutsu, Jiraiya unexpectedly discovered the reason why his foundation was much more solid than expected. Being able to pass on the bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique to Minato without reservation is enough to make Jiraiya look up to Muen. After everyone chatted for a while, Jiraiya suddenly said to everyone, I feel a lot younger when I'm with you. This feeling is really good. Master Jiraiya, why don't you get together with us more often in the future? Kurama Huan said nonchalantly. I want to, but everyone has his own mission, and I'm no exception. Jiraiya paused, and then said, I will leave tomorrow, and I have my own things to do. Teacher Jiraiya, can't you wait a little longer? Why are you so anxious? Kushina puffed her cheeks, and said a little dissatisfied. At first, Kushina was still a little dissatisfied with Jiraiya taking up a lot of Minato's time. Later, as the contact gradually deepened, Kushina gradually felt his kindness, and the relationship became closer unconsciously. There's nothing I can do. Minato learns too fast. Jiraiya joked, if he learns slower, maybe I can stay longer. Hearing this, Minato smiled helplessly and said, Teacher, stop teasing me. Muen didn't say anything to dissuade him, but he knew that it would be useless to persuade him. Jiraiya is about to travel the world to find the Son of Prophecy who will change the ninja world as predicted by the Toad Sage. But I don't know what Jiraiya felt when he found out that the so-called Son of Prophecy was in Konoha. At this time, Muen suddenly thought again, wondering if his arrival has caused some changes in the prophecy of the Toad Sage. It is likely that it has not changed much. After all, his strength has not yet reached the level that can change the world. At this time, Jiraiya called Minato aside, away from the crowd, and said alone, Minato, take Kushina out for a walk when I leave. She doesn't have much time to go out at will. Jiraiya's words surprised Minato, but before he could ask, Jiraiya continued, don't worry, Kushina's life will not be in any danger, but her freedom will be restricted. If you want Kushina to live a better life, work hard to become Hokage. Although he didn't know the specific reason, Minato's desire to become Hokage at this time was unprecedentedly high. The next day, Jiraiya left Konoha quietly, just like when he came. Chapter 96, Ultimate Yang Done. Half a year has passed before we know it. During this half year, nothing major or strange has happened to Muen. Of course, for Kurama Huan, there was a strange thing. That is, on the day Jiraiya left, a member of his team withdrew, which made her sad for a while, thinking that it was because she, as the captain, was not doing a good enough job. Muen didn't say much, just comforted her a little. Minato followed Jiraiya's advice and took Kushina to run around in the name of doing tasks, almost visiting all the countries around Konoha, which made Kushina very excited. Inozuka Shida and Hinata Akizuki led their teams to successfully complete the tasks assigned by the village. Together with Kurama Huan, they finally succeeded in being promoted to Jonin. At this time, in Muen's courtyard, Muen was sitting cross-legged under a tree, orderly transforming the two attributes of water and earth chakra into wood attribute chakra with the tree as the medium, and then introducing the wood attribute chakra into the body, forming a bloodstain practice of wood release. Kaintang, who was standing by, quickly formed a seal, stretched out his arm and whispered, "Would release great forest technique." 2 wooden sticks emerged from his stretched right arm and strangled him forward. At this time, Muen had also stopped practicing and looked at Kaientang's ninjutsu, saying, "Your small forest is not even a big forest. I'm not proficient yet, brother Muen." Kaientang said a little embarrassedly, "When I'm proficient, the power of the ninjutsu will be stronger." That's right, in just over half a year, Kaientang's would release bloodline has been successfully practiced. This made Muen, who practiced earlier than Kaientang, stunned and almost called it unfair. You know, based on the experience of practicing sword release at the beginning, Muen knew that his would release practice still had a long way to go. But Muen thought about it again and felt relieved. Kaientang was originally from the Senju family and had the first generation gene. The practice of wood release may have stimulated and awakened the blood that might never awaken. Of course, another reason is that Kaientang is young. It didn't take Muen too long to practice sword release from the beginning, and the older Hatake Tsukumo has not yet mastered it. Brother Muen, I can graduate now. Kaientang said excitedly. Kakashi is only 5 years old this year and has passed the graduation assessment. It's really unreasonable for me not to graduate. You are still far away. Look at your ninjutsu just now. If you face the enemy like this, you will be eaten as a dish. Muen hit without hesitation. Practice well first. When you are proficient in ninjutsu and the time is right, I will let you graduate. After Kaientang left with a hammerhead, Muen stood up, closed his eyes and concentrated, and began to make seals with his hands. In the past 6 months, Muen has not been without gains. After studying Beisetsu, Muen finally figured out how to get the extreme vitality in Beisetsu's body, and now is the time to start practicing. With the help of the seal, Muen concentrated all his energy on running the chakra in his body. After about a quarter of an hour, the chakra fluctuations in his body slowly subsided. At this time, Muen was sweating profusely. Even with his current chakra control ability, it was very strenuous, and the secret technique almost failed. At this time, there was a small ball of warm chakra on Muen's right index finger. This was the result of working hard for a quarter of an hour, and it was also the source of vitality in Beisetsu's body. Then, Muen dispersed the chakra in his left eye, and blood splashed in his left eye in an instant. But at this time, Muen was not in a hurry. He transferred the chakra on his right index finger to his left eye, and transformed it into a powerful vitality. Under the nourishment of this vitality, Muen only felt a wave of tingling in his eye sockets. When this small ball of chakra was about to be exhausted, the tingling sensation in the eye socket just disappeared. Muen opened his left eye nervously, and the scene in the courtyard was reflected in front of him very clearly. Muen was very sure that he had dispersed the chakra eyeball. So, this meant that he finally made his left eye grow again by studying chakra. Then, Muen slowly calmed down his excitement. He made a seal again, preparing to condense the chakra again. Unfortunately, it failed this time. Muen understood that this was caused by his current excitement. Even though he had suppressed his emotions, it still had a certain impact on the stability of chakra control. Muen was excited, not only because his eyes had been completely cured, but more importantly, Muen suspected that the chakra just now belonged to the ultimate yang escape chakra. It was also very simple to verify it. If this ball of chakra belonged to the ultimate yang escape chakra, then there would be no need to go through any other form of transformation, and all yang escape ninjutsu could be used directly with this ball of chakra, including but not limited to palm immortal technique, corpse vein bloodline ninjutsu and so on. Muen, who really couldn't calm down, used the water escape ninjutsu to condense a huge water ball, and after he was soaked like a drowned chicken, the excitement in his heart really dissipated a lot. Then Muen exhaled a few times, concentrated his mind, and began to seal and operate chakra. A quarter of an hour later, Muen finally condensed that small ball of chakra again as he wished. The first thing Muen performed was the corpse vein bloodline ninjutsu. The upper phalanx of the right index finger grew out of the flesh and blood, and broke away and fired out. The corpse vein ninjutsu was performed successfully. The subsequent several ninjutsu experiments were all successful without exception. It shows that the guess is correct. Muen has really mastered the ultimate yang escape chakra condensation method. This is the significance of Muen's research on chakra. The corpse vein ninjutsu of the Kaguya clan is powerful, but when the Kaguya clan performs the corpse vein ninjutsu, they only perform it by instinct. There is no understanding of the process of chakra transformation into bloodline ninjutsu, let alone the condensation of chakra of this attribute. However, Muen was able to transform chakra of this attribute according to the operation of his chakra, and created the bone strengthening and body strengthening technique. This is a ninjutsu that anyone can perform, as long as the ability to control and sense chakra reaches a certain level. Similarly, the first generation Hokage, Senju Hashirama, mastered the ultimate yang release. However, the first generation could only instinctively transform his own chakra into a powerful vitality through the ultimate yang release, and did not condense this ultimate yang release chakra. However, after a long period of research, Muen condensed the ultimate yang release chakra, giving the ultimate yang release chakra more possibilities. Moreover, this kind of condensation can be copied by ordinary people, but it is extremely difficult. Chapter 97, The Grace of Rebirth. After practicing bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique, spirit condensation technique and sword escape bloodline, as he grew older, Muen's chakra volume now far exceeded that of an average jonin. But even with such a huge amount of chakra, if he worked hard for more than a quarter of an hour, the ultimate yang escape chakra converted was just enough for Muen to heal one eye, and this conversion rate was extremely low. It was definitely incomparable to the powerful healing ability that the first generation had anytime and anywhere, and using the ultimate yang escape chakra in battle was even more of a fantasy. No enemy would allow Muen to spend so much time to condense chakra. Of course, even so, Muen was very happy. Even in the era of science and technology, a new scientific and technological achievement needs to go through a process to be transformed into productivity. This secret technique will always come into play one day. In fact, after the verification was completed, Muen already had a new idea. Bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique is a secret technique developed based on the corpse vein bloodline. Its main function is to strengthen the bones, which in turn drives the strengthening of other parts of the body. Its bone strengthening effect is obviously stronger, and there is an obvious biased phenomenon. By combining the research on bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique with the ultimate yang escape chakra, it is possible to improve the secret technique. Of course, this will also be Muen's research direction for some time to come. So far, Muen's research on white zetsu has come to an end. In order to reward himself, Muen went to bed early. The next day, Muen, who got up early, did not go directly to the hospital, but came to a welfare home in Konoha. Here are all ninjas who lost their ability to move during the mission. Muen came here to visit an old friend, the civilian ninja who passed on his first earth attribute ninjutsu to him that year, Yosuke. Since Konoha's funds are not very abundant, there will certainly not be much good treatment for ninjas who have lost their value. Therefore, life in the welfare home will not be very good. It is already very good to be able to maintain food and clothing, and most of the time it is below the food and clothing line. But Yosuke is obviously not among them. Yosuke's life is not comfortable, but it is true that he has no worries about food and clothing, which surprised Muen for a while. According to Yosuke, he has many friends, and people often come to visit him and give him relief, and there is never a lack of relief supplies. The rule of this welfare home is that relief supplies belong to whoever they belong to, and they are used by specific people. However, Yosuke should have a lot of friends, at least Muen is one of them, and he basically brings some daily necessities to visit every 2 months. During this period, Muen also met other ninjas who came to visit him. Hey, Muen. Yosuke was a little surprised to see Muen coming, and said happily, "You just came not long ago. According to your previous habits, it should take a long time to come." Yosuke, who had just woken up from the hospital bed, was a man who didn't talk much. After all, no matter who it is, they will not be in a good mood when they find that they will spend the rest of their lives in a wheelchair and bed. It is said that time is the best medicine and can heal everything. After a few years, Yosuke has also thought it through, and his personality has gradually returned to his cheerful appearance before the injury. You remember it very clearly, Muen said with a smile. Can't I come to see you more often? Of course you are welcome. You know, I'm a waste now. I live on your relief. Now I count the days on my fingers every day, counting who will come to see me, Yasuke also said jokingly. However, Muen still heard some bitterness in his words. Unfortunately, several friends have never come to see me again, Yasuke said with some sadness. I hope they just forget me. Muen was silent for a while after hearing this. Of course, he knew what Yasuke meant. Most of his friends had died in the process of performing their missions. The life of a ninja is like this. No one knows when they will die, and how they will die. Okay, why did I bring this up with you? It was still Yasuke who broke the silence first, saying, you came to me for something, right? Is there anything I, a paraplegic, can help you with? I will do my best. You know, I'm a medical ninja, and I recently learned a secret technique that may have some effect on your injury. However, I'm not sure about the specific effect. Without waiting for Muen to finish his words, Yasuke's eyes gleamed, and he hurriedly said, I'm willing. Let me try the effect of this secret technique. You know, Yasuke is only 23 years old now, and he should be in his prime and full of fighting spirit, but now he can only sit in a wheelchair or lie in bed, and he needs someone to serve him when he eats, drinks, defecates, and urinates. No matter how indifferent he pretends to be on the outside, his inner desire to recover his health will not disappear. Now that he has a chance to recover his health, it is still worth a try, even if the chance is slim. After all, it won't be worse for Yasuke than it is now. Since Yasuke has agreed, Muen will no longer hesitate. A quarter of an hour later, Muen was ready to nourish Yasuke's injured cerebellum with the vigorous vitality transformed by Yang Dun, hoping that his cerebellum could recover on its own. When Muen used the limbs of White Zetsu to transplant organs to Naoki Akimichi and Hideo Ito, he felt a pity when he thought of Yasuke. After all, Muen couldn't do such a thing as replacing brains. Now, nourishing the injured part of Yasuke's brain with vitality and allowing it to heal itself should be the best treatment plan in Muen's opinion. After the treatment, Yasuke's face became a little excited. He stood up from the wheelchair tremblingly and walked a few steps slowly with some disbelief. After adapting a little, he walked faster and faster and murmured excitedly, I'm really fine, really fine. After confirming that there was no hindrance to his movements, Yasuke couldn't help but laugh. As he laughed, tears flowed unconsciously. After a long time, Yasuke finally calmed down, looked at Muen, bowed excitedly and said, Muen, thank you so much. If you have any instructions in the future, Yasuke will do his best to obey. That's not necessary. After all, I got my first Earth Escape ninjutsu from you. Just consider it as my repayment. Muen smiled and said, are you still going to be a ninja? Of course. Yasuke answered decisively, if I don't become a ninja, how can I repay your kindness? Yasuke doesn't think that any level small ninjutsu can be compared with this kind of rebirth. Even if Muen doesn't ask for anything in return, he can't take this great favor for granted. Chapter 98, Nine-Tailed Fox Transfer. Yasuke's successful treatment fully demonstrates the advanced nature of Muen's research. After all, no one has ever heard that the first generation can apply its powerful healing power to other people, but Muen did it. Muen is not indifferent to Yasuke's desire to repay his gratitude. Since the root incident, Muen has known the benefits of having a huge force, but Muen will not deliberately manage it. Muen always believes that, as long as he is strong enough, the ninjas and families who have benefited from him will not forget his kindness. Of course, if one day he is down and out, and his strength is not strong, he will not expect them to fulfill their original promises and vows. As long as he becomes stronger and stronger, the forces around him will gradually become larger. After treating Yasuke, Muen did not stay in the welfare home for long, but rushed straight to the hospital. If it is later, he will be late for work. At the same time, Minato and Kushina have also returned from their mission. At the entrance of the village, Minato and Kushina were stopped by an Enbu ninja. Uzumaki Kushina, the Hokage wants to see you, the Enbu ninja said calmly. For some reason, Kushina felt a little uneasy after hearing this voice. She didn't say anything, but looked at Minato with a look of help. Minato looked at the Enbu ninja and asked, can you tell me what it is? Seeing that the Anbu ninja didn't answer, Minato frowned slightly and said, "Then can I go with you?" The Anbu ninja thought for a while and replied, "The Hokage's order does not prohibit others from going with you." Hearing this, Kushina's uneasy heart instantly felt much more at ease. As long as Minato was there, she would not be afraid. Then, the two waved goodbye to their teammates on this mission, and ran away with the Anbu ninja. Along the way, Minato carefully discovered that the direction of the Anbu ninja was not the direction of the Hokage building, and Minato's heart instantly became alert. When Muen rushed to the hospital, he happened to see Tsunade hurriedly coming out of the hospital under the leadership of an Anbu ninja. "Muen, you're here." Tsunade also saw Muen, thought for a moment, and said, "Come with me." Muen heard this, and quickly followed without saying a word. In less than a moment, Muen and the other two had arrived at their destination. At this time, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen was standing outside a room with a serious face. There were a large number of Anbu ninjas on guard around, and there was no one else, except Minato and Kushina. Seeing this scene and Kushina's somewhat dazed and depressed expression not far away, Muen suddenly understood what was going to happen next. The third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen saw Muen among the people coming, frowned, and looked at Tsunade. He seemed to blame Tsunade for bringing Muen here. Tsunade did not show any weakness, and looked at him calmly. After all, he was a little at fault in Danzo's handling of the problem. The third Hokage shook his head, and didn't care too much, saying, "Since you are all here, let's go in." Then the group entered the room. There was an old lady sitting beside the bed, wearing a plain white gown and a red bun. She looked at everyone calmly and said, "I don't have much time left. In order to avoid any accidents in the future, today is the time to reseal the Nine Tails. Grandmother, can't you stay a little longer?" Tsunade said with some sadness. "Once the Nine Tails is resealed, Uzumaki Mito's life will come to an end." Tsunade, "Don't be sad, I have lived long enough." Uzumaki Mito shook her head and said, "While I still have some strength, it is best to reseal the Nine Tails. It is too dangerous to delay it any longer. Hiruzen, I will leave the Senju people in your care after I leave." Uzumaki Mito looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen and said. The third generation said with some self-blame, "Don't worry, Mito-sama, the bad incident last time will never happen again." Uzumaki Mito nodded, and said to everyone, "In that case, the little girl will stay, and everyone else can go out first." Hearing this, everyone went out one after another. Kushina looked at Minato with some uneasiness. Seeing this, Minato patted her hand gently and nodded, indicating that he was just outside the door, "So don't worry." At this time, there were only Kushina and Uzumaki Mito left in the room. "Come closer, child." Uzumaki Mito smiled at Kushina, a member of the Uzumaki clan, and felt very kind in his heart. Kushina walked slowly to Uzumaki Mito after hearing that. Uzumaki Mito took Kushina's hand and hugged her in his arms, stroking Kushina's red hair, and said softly, "When you found out, you were shocked, sad and painful." Uzumaki Mito's words touched Kushina's heart. She really regarded Konoha as her home, but now she suddenly heard that her family took her in just to use her one day. How could she not be sad and painful? Compared to this, the restricted freedom after becoming a Jinchuriki seemed a little insignificant. Seeing that Kushina didn't say anything, Uzumaki Mito shook his head and continued, "You can tell me the truth." Kushina lowered her head and still didn't speak. Uzumaki Mito had to continue, "Listen carefully, we are indeed the container of the Nine Tails. However, even if we live as a Jinchuriki, there are ways to be happy." Kushina finally reacted after hearing this, and looked up at Uzumaki Mito. Uzumaki Mito looked at Kushina's surprised expression, and then smiled and said, "First, let the container be filled with love." Kushina spoke for the first time, and said in confusion, "What love? You will understand it slowly in the future." Uzumaki Mito smiled slightly and continued, "The little boy with yellow hair next to you just now, he is very strong." "Yes, Minato is the strongest," Kushina said with some pride. "Really? That's good." Uzumaki Mito looked at Kushina, and seemed to see the young self, and Senju Hashirama for a moment. "Let's get started." Uzumaki Mito made seals with both hands, then put one hand on Kushina's belly, slowly drawing out the Nine Tails chakra from his body, and sealing it on Kushina. Of course, the Ninetales didn't want to be sealed again, so it had to struggle desperately to break through the seal. This will be a battle between Uzumaki Mito and the Ninetales, which is also why Uzumaki Mito said that it would be more dangerous if it was delayed. Minato outside the door no longer had the calmness he had just had in the room, and he didn't care about the expressions of others. He walked back and forth with his head down and an anxious look on his face. Seeing this, Muen walked up to him, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "Don't be nervous, believe in Lord Mito. Everything will be fine." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 99 Minato's Determination. Outside the room, Minato calmed down a little with Moon's constant consolation. Suddenly, a terrifying chakra fluctuation was heard in the room. This time, it was not only Minato who was nervous, but the Sander who was standing beside him also frowned and looked unsightly, and Tsunade clenched her fists with a solemn expression. Fortunately, the chakra fluctuation came and went quickly, and soon subsided, making everyone breathe a sigh of relief. In the sealed space of Uzumaki Mito's body, the golden chain wrapped around the Ninetales rattled. The Ninetales struggled frantically and roared, "Uzumaki Mito, you can still live longer. Why would you rather choose to die early than let me go free?" Uzumaki Mito continued to extract the Ninetales chakra, sighing and saying, "Ninetales, I absolutely cannot let you go. You are too angry now. Once you are free, you will definitely take revenge on Konoha. Konoha at this moment can't stand your torment. Shouldn't I take revenge?" The Ninetales roared, "Konoha has imprisoned me for so many years without reason. They deserve to be punished." Uzumaki Mito heard this and shook his head and said, "Konoha is Hashirama's hard work and lifelong ambition. I will never allow you to destroy it." After that, Uzumaki Mito increased the speed of chakra extraction and quickly sealed it into Uzumaki Kushina's body. Uzumaki Mito and the Ninetales have been symbiotic for many years, so naturally he understands the strength of the Ninetales. Now she is maintaining the transfer of the seal with the last flame of life, so she is naturally quite sure that there will be no accidents in this process. No matter how the Ninetales struggles, it can never escape the shackles of the golden chain. Sealing the tailed beast to become a Jinchuriki is actually the process of combining the ninja and the tailed beast into a life form with two consciousnesses through sealing techniques. Assuming that this new life form is a person, due to the huge difference in power between the two sides, the ninja is equivalent to a hand of the person, and the tailed beast is equivalent to the entire person except for that hand. Therefore, when the tailed beast in the body of the Jinchuriki is stripped off, the ninja will die without any accident, because a hand cannot survive after being separated from the person. On the contrary, the life of the tailed beast is not affected in any way. And if you want to become a perfect Jinchuriki, the first method is that the ninja's will is strong and not affected by the consciousness of the tailed beast and can easily forcibly take the tailed beast chakra for your own use. The other method is to obtain the recognition of the tailed beast and the two consciousnesses work together to exert a powerful force. These are some of Muen's personal insights on Jinchuriki after some research and understanding of the sealing technique. At this time, Kushina had already become the nine-tailed Jinchuriki. In the sealed space of Kushina's body, the nine-tailed was tightly entangled by the golden chains derived from Kushina's body and could not move at all. Knowing that it was inevitable that it would be sealed again, the nine-tailed had calmed down and its eyes were fixed on the consciousness of Kushina and Uzumaki Mito outside the seal, and the anger in its eyes seemed to be real. "Kushina, this is the nine-tailed you will spend the rest of your life with." Uzumaki Mito pointed to the huge nine-tailed in the seal and said with a smile, "Don't look at him as scary. He is actually easy to get along with." Although Uzumaki Mito said so, Kushina was still frightened by the huge body of the nine-tailed in the sealed space. Another Uzumaki clan member? The nine-tails looked at Kushina's red hair and the golden chains on his body and said sarcastically, "It seems that Konoha has been planning for a long time and actually found an Uzumaki clan member early. Ninetales, I know that I feel a little sorry for you, but Konoha and I have no choice. It feels good to be with you all these years." Thank you for your company all these years. Kushina is also a very good child. Believe me, you will get along well. Uzumaki Mito looked at the Ninetales and said with a smile, "Goodbye, old friend." Uzumaki Mito's consciousness began to slowly dissipate. She finally touched Kushina's head and said with a smile, "Get along well with the Ninetales in the future and remember to fill the container with love." After that, Uzumaki Mito had completely disappeared. The sealed Ninetales looked at the disappearing Uzumaki Mito, knowing that this person who had lived with it for a long time had reached the end of his life. It suddenly felt a little sad, and the anger in its heart dissipated a little. However, its determination to retaliate against Konoha has never wavered. In the room, Kushina slowly woke up. Mito Uzumaki beside her had lost the breath of life, but a kind smile still remained on her face. Kushina tidied up Mito Uzumaki's body and laid it flat on the bed, then slowly stood up and saluted reverently. After all, this Uzumaki clan member released enough kindness for her at the end of his life, and Kushina was still very grateful. Then, Kushina walked to the door, ready to welcome her fate. The door slowly opened, and everyone outside the door saw Kushina walk out of the door safely. They all understood that the seal of the Ninetales had been successful. The third generation and Minato were relieved, and their nervous mood could not help but calm down a lot. Only Tsunade looked sad at this time. Her grandmother had left forever. "Kushina, how is it?" Minato rushed forward first, holding Kushina's hand, and asked nervously. "I don't feel anything. It's no different from usual." Looking at Minato's anxious eyes, Kushina felt at ease and said with a smile, "At least Minato's feelings for her are real, and that's enough." Hearing Kushina say this, Minato's worried heart finally calmed down completely. After confirming that Kushina had indeed become the new Ninetales Jinchuriki safely, Moon, Kushina and Minato were driven out by the Sandai and others. They had to start busying themselves with Uzumaki Mito's funeral. After sending Kushina home, Moon and Minato walked calmly on the streets of Konoha. When they came to a sparsely populated place, Minato suddenly stopped and said, "Moon, I must become Hokage." Moon knew that Minato had always aimed to become Hokage. He emphasized it again at this time, and he must have had some new experience. Seeing Moon's gaze, Minato's expression was unprecedentedly firm, and he said seriously, "Only if I become Hokage can I protect Kushina and make Kushina live a better life. I will fully support you," Moon said with a smile without hesitation. Hearing this, Minato also laughed happily. This is considered an agreement between the two. Chapter 100 Danzo's Thoughts. The new root office was built in the basement on the original site. With the help of ninjutsu, the traces of the battle had long disappeared without a trace. When Kushina became the new Ninetales Jinchuriki, Danzo was pushed into the root office in a wheelchair. Danzo looked at Orochimaru who was working, and pretended to be surprised and asked, "Mr. Minister, why are you still here?" Orochimaru was a little puzzled, and said in confusion, "If I'm not here, then where should I be? Don't you know?" Seeing Orochimaru's puzzled face, Danzo continued, "It shouldn't be. Now is the time for Uzumaki Mito to transfer the seal of the Ninetales. Didn't the third generation tell you about this successor? Such an important matter, of course. The fewer people know, the better. I guess the old man won't tell anyone except himself," Orochimaru said nonchalantly. "But it is said that Tsunade is at the scene." Danzo continued, "What's so strange about this? Uzumaki Mito is Tsunade's grandmother, so it's only natural for her to see her for the last time." Orochimaru looked at Danzo as if he were an idiot. Orochimaru felt that Danzo had run out of tricks and had resorted to such a crude attempt to sow discord. Could it be that he would still be jealous and wary of Tsunade because of this? Danzo didn't care about Orochimaru's look, pretending to be puzzled, and then said, "What about the Konoha twin stars? How come these two brats are also here?" Orochimaru heard this, smiled, stared at Danzo with evil charm, exuding an extremely dangerous aura, and said, "You know a lot, Danzo. This matter, except for the Anbu around the old man, there should be no one who knows. It seems that you have done a lot of things in the past few years in charge of the root. There are actually people of yours in the Anbu. What do you want to do? Do you want to rebel?" Facing the terrifying look of Orochimaru, Danzo was not panicked, lowered his head and said, "As long as the minister is willing, these people will all be loyal to you." Give me the list. Orochimaru said expressionlessly. Yes. Danzo lowered his head and handed a list to Orochimaru, as if he had prepared it long ago. Seeing that Orochimaru took the list and put it directly in his arms, as if he had no intention of handing it over to the third Hokage, Danzo was secretly delighted, which showed that Orochimaru still had his own little thoughts. Danzo never thought that he could create grudges between Orochimaru and the third Hokage at once, but he believed that, as long as he did not get discouraged and continued to persist, cracks and distrust would appear sooner or later. After that, based on the characteristics of Orochimaru's research preferences, he could win over and corrupt Orochimaru by catering to his interests. Root will return to his hands sooner or later. On the other hand, after being cured, Yasuke's first stop was to the Hatake family and found Hatake Tsukumo. Brother Tsukumo. Yasuke looked at Hatake Tsukumo's surprised expression and said happily. Hatake Tsukumo looked at Yasuke standing in front of him, a little unbelievable, and walked around him a few times, and said in surprise, "Is it done?" Yasuke nodded vigorously and said, "It's done." Before Yasuke was injured, he secretly formed an alliance with some like-minded people such as Muen's parents, and their leader was the strongest Hatake Tsukumo. Therefore, when Muen expressed the need to seek Earth Attribute ninjutsu, Yasuke did not hesitate to pass on the Earth Attribute ninjutsu to Muen. So, there is never love without reason in this world. How did you get better? You know, the entire Konoha hospital was helpless with your injury at that time. Hatake Tsukumo said in surprise. Seeing that Yasuke was a little hesitant, Hatake Tsukumo laughed and said, "Do you need to keep it secret? It doesn't matter, I won't ask anymore in the future. Anyway, I'm still very happy that you can recover." Hatake Tsukumo was really happy to see Yasuke. He was very optimistic about Yasuke at the beginning, and he felt sorry for a while after Yasuke was injured. As a civilian ninja, Yasuke has a rare talent. If he had not been injured, he might have become a Jonin now. What are your plans for the future? Hatake Tsukumo's excitement gradually calmed down and asked. Of course I will continue to be a ninja. I just want to continue to follow you, Yasuke said seriously. Hatake Tsukumo heard this and was silent for a while. Did something happen? Yasuke saw that Hatake Tsukumo stopped talking and said nervously, "Or do you no longer need me?" "Nothing, it's just that we had some problems internally. We are a little different from a few years ago. But the problem should not be big. You can go find Mumu Gandeo later. He will make arrangements for you." Hatake Tsukumo shook his head and said with a smile, "Okay." Yasuke was also a little heavy. He knew that the problem would definitely not be as simple as Hatake Tsukumo said. Just as Yasuke was about to say goodbye and leave, a little boy with a forehead protector on his head walked over. Seeing this, Yasuke took the forehead protector off the boy's head and jokingly said, "Don't play ninja games casually, kids. If you want to be a ninja, you should wait until you grow up." The boy was unhappy when he heard this, and the forehead protector was returned to his hand without him making any move. This surprised Yasuke. Although he had been lying down for a few years and his strength had indeed declined, he didn't think he would be unable to see through the movements of a child. But what really happened was that he really didn't see through the movements of the boy opposite him. The little boy looked at Yasuke with a surprised expression and said contemptuously, "I'm not a little brat who only knows how to play house. I have graduated from the ninja school and I'm a real ninja." "Father, is this your friend?" Kakashi looked at Hatake Tsukumo and said puzzledly, "But he is too weak." "Kakashi, you must respect your seniors. Apologize to Yasuke Sr." Hatake Tsukumo first looked at Kakashi with an angry face, and then said to Yasuke embarrassedly, "This is my son Hatake Kakashi. He is 5 years old, and has graduated from the ninja school." Faced with his father's reprimand, Kakashi said to Yasuke very reluctantly, "I'm sorry Yasuke Sr." Yasuke was shocked, and faced with Kakashi's apology, he hurriedly said, No, I did it wrong first. Taking off the ninja's forehead protector is really disrespectful to the ninja. I'm sorry, Kakashi. By the way, he's worthy of being Mr. Tsukumo's son." Yasuke came back to his senses from the shock and said, "Graduating at the age of 5, this should break the record of the ninja school. I'll see if I can write 6,000 words tomorrow." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.